Turn on multi-stream so I can see both chats. All right, now let's share this. Oh, and I was running from the rain as on a day nobody knows. All right, hold on. Let me share this out really quick. This isn't going to be long. I'm just going. There is no way I was about to watch 10 hours of that Pisco Rob debate. I would tune in for a little bit and I would turn it back off, and I would come back like 3 hours later and they were still going. Brutal stuff. Brutal stuff. Hold on, let me just share this out really quick. Let me share this. 1 second. 1 second. Okay. All right, I think we're good. I hope we're good. I think we're good. Okay. Well, like I said, I wasn't about to watch 10 hours of a Rob Pisco debate on court packing. But I would tune in every once in a while, and I just wanted to see some of the afterthoughts, I guess. And this video came across my timeline, and I listened to it for a little bit, and it doesn't seem like they understand certain things about the sort of norms that Pisco was talking about, or the sort of norms that I would be for in these sort of debate spaces. So, like I said, this is going to be a quick stream. I just want to go over some of the things that were said in this because I was listening to it and I was getting triggered. I haven't finished it. But yeah, I guess we can jump right in. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
The champ is here.
What's up?
Champ is here.
Your tired host, Rob Noerr, here with Ryan Mullaly. We're going to discuss the marathon debate last night. As poor as Pisco did, and with although Avi, I think, seems like a very nice guy, and I have some criticism with the moderation, though nothing to really impugn him as a human being or anything. Man, you got to give credit to both of them as well for staying up for, I think it was like 11 hours. So, it's here, though. I feel good.
Psychopathic, by the way.
Happy to talk about it here today, and thank you, Ryan, for
10 hours
being here
is
as well.
fucking crazy.
Of course, buddy. Of course. Yeah, they get 1 point for endurance and negative 1,000 points for tyrannical aspirations. So, you know, you can do the scoreboard that way, and it checks out. No, you did fantastic, Rob. You did yeoman's work. I'm not sure I would ever want to do an 11-hour debate, much less an 11-hour debate with Pisco. So that's truly an endurance contest. So well done sticking that out. And by the way, and also from what I've seen, absolutely crushing face. I will not claim I watched the whole 11-hour debate, Rob, but.
So first up, I have to give you credit because I think, obviously,
Are they loud enough?
Because part of the debate was talking about your.
Are
debate.
you men
That was one of the
circumcised?
prompts, right? And so,
Absolutely.
I think that the strategy you employed, or at least the reason behind the strategy,
Great
was sort
question.
of seminal to my strategy as well. Which is the grievance we have here is that Pisco is just a partisan actor who just wants power because he thinks he and his side are good and his opponents are bad. And so they start with that justification and then say, okay, in our attempts to get that power, to convince
I mean, I don't know if that's true. I mean, that just sounds like psychoanalyzing. I don't know Pisco's motivations. Maybe Rob's right here. I don't know. But I have a feeling that Pisco would reject that, but who knows? Maybe Rob's right. Maybe his psychoanalysis is correct.
to give us that power, we have to make it seem benign. We have to make it seem like it's appealing to principles of neutrality or justice or fairness. But in reality, that's not their intent. They just aim to go way beyond it. And so what they do is they're like, oh, no, 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 it's fair, it's just, it's whatever. Get lost in this minutia, hyper focus on details, make it seem like just these little reasonable things, when in reality, their intent is tyrannical change to this government to give themselves authoritarian powers so that they have power perpetually. That's it. And so I hope that I exhibited last night in 11 hours. That was the point that I was trying to illustrate, which I announced. I want the audience at the end of the day to understand that this is a representation of the Democratic Party and exactly what they plan to do. And I think that when he ends the debate, I know we talked about it a little, you didn't see it. Literally, he admits it at the end of the debate. It's just my preferences. Dems should pack the court because I think it's good for them to pack the court, and Democrats are good. That's the truth. And the fact that he's like, of course.
Well, what's like the critique of that though? If somebody's meta-ethical view is stance dependent, so that's what they're talking about when they say something is good. What's the critique of that exactly? Because when you say it's just my preferences, what's the critique supposed to be? You're just describing somebody's meta ethics. I don't. People do this all the time, especially people in the ortho sphere. They want to say it's just your preferences. Well, what is just doing there? Like, what is that adding? And what is actually the critique, right? Like, what's actually the critique?
That's the case at the end of the debate. It took 11 hours to get there, but I'm happy for the admission.
Well, because that's what it is at the end of the day, right? Like, it's a syllogism that's full of these custom proprietary definitions and utterances without actual meaning. And then
I highly doubt he would say that they're utterances without. Did he say actual meaning? What does that mean?
Definitions and utterances without actual meaning.
What is the difference between meaning and actual meaning, right? I don't know what that means either. But I highly doubt Pisco would say, yeah, the words I'm using are meaningless, right? That seems like, I don't want to say he's doing that intentionally, right? But obviously he's going to say, yeah, the words that I'm using in the argument have meaning. They're just indexed to what I mean, right? What's the issue there?
And then, but at the end of the day, a valid syllogism doesn't mean very much, Rob. It doesn't mean anything at all. Like, if A, then B, A, therefore B. If Democrats good, then pack court. Democrats good, conclusion, then pack court. That's not, like, the fact that you've constructed a symbolically valid syllogism doesn't mean anything. By the way, it's never convinced a voter.
Well, it passes the first test of having an argument whose conclusion follows from the premises, right? I don't think anybody's saying, well, I have a valid syllogism, therefore what I'm saying is true, right? I don't think that's what he's saying. Validity is just a property of arguments where if the premises are true, then the conclusion necessarily follows. I don't think he's saying, well, I have a valid syllogism, so I win or something like that. I don't know what point he's trying to make there, because even in, I guess, this sort of average conversation or debate where it's not formalized, the argument isn't formalized, we're still making arguments, right? If we wanted to, we could take what you're saying and formalize your argument to make it valid, or maybe not. Right? I don't know what it means, what he means when he says that it doesn't mean anything. Well, it means your argument is at the very least valid. Like, if the premises are true, then the conclusion necessarily follows. So now we have to figure out the truth of the premises, right? So I don't know. Once again, I don't know what exactly the critique is supposed to be.
In the history of man,
that's the real point.
It's never convinced a single voter. But B, who cares? Like, the thing that was I found so personally vindicating about what you did last night is, imagine you're me. You're like, okay, Pisco's going to debate this bullshit syllogism with his bullshit definitions and his bullshit power grab. But you're on modern day debate and you only have an hour. Can you actually unpick that syllogism with the way he's going to talk about definitions in an hour? No. It took 11.
Why not? Why couldn't you do that? Why couldn't you just go through the language really quick, jot down what he means if you don't know what he means by a specific word, go through the premises, dissect the premises. If you don't accept a premise, ask for an argument for that premise. Why couldn't you do that? What's stopping you from doing that? You just didn't do that. I mean, at one point he did say, "Oh, I think he rejects like premise 5 or 6 or something." So, I mean, he does eventually get to that, but then he goes back to not engaging with the premises again. He didn't even try. I don't know why he's saying like you couldn't do that. You could do that. I have seen people do that in less than an hour.
11 fucking hours to get to the end of the rainbow.
Dude, it took fucking 3 hours just to do the portion on your debate.
Yeah.
It was an hour and 45 minutes, and we were on premise 1 of his syllogism on your debate with him. Premise 1 in that debate was something to this effect. If Ryan didn't justify his position or undermine the justification for my position, he did bad in the debate, right? Now, the whole Philbro thing, it's so funny to me. I'll make a quick case here. I have some friends that debate sort of Philbro style, right?
Mm-hmm.
I doubt it. No offense, Rob, but I mean, I doubt it. Maybe you do, but I'm in spaces similar to Rob, and people do not debate like Pisco did with Ryan. At least the people that I've seen, they, in these sort of right-wing spaces, they don't try to give formal arguments, and a lot of the philosophy is confused. I mean, maybe he knows people that I know, right, that actually do this, and that's who he's referring to, but I'm skeptical of that.
It's not for me. And I think that it doesn't really translate to practical applications of real-world, practical political change. I don't think anyone...
Was that... I mean, it does... Hold on.
Right?
Repeat that.
It's not for me. And I think that it doesn't really translate to practical applications of real-world, practical political change.
It doesn't apply to real-world, practical change. Giving formal arguments... doesn't. I mean, it could. It doesn't apply to real world practical change. I don't think that's like necessarily a goal that Pisco had, right? The goal, I would assume the goal for him was to show that his argument is sound. Not that this argument is going to demonstrate some real world or bring about some real world practical change. So that just seems like a side quest. What is this chat? I have no clue. I don't know what this guy is talking about. I hope he's gone.
I don't think anyone in their fucking mind is going to be like, listen, are you considering voting for Republicans or Democrats? Yeah, I'm on the fence. Well, here's the deal. Here's why you should vote for Republicans and give them extreme power forever. Because we're going to define Democrats as Satan child attackers. That's our definition. It's a proprietary definition of Satan child. So wouldn't it be a valid syllogism to say we don't like Satan attackers of children? Democrats we define as Satan attackers of children. Therefore, we have to reject Democrats. They're going to be like, what the fuck drugs are you on?
No, because either you're going to obviously be equivocating on Democrats in the argument, but if we just replace what you mean by Democrats into the argument, then yeah, what you're saying is trivial, right? Once again, what is the issue here?
Excuse me? Get the fuck out of my way. I don't think that what they're doing with that Phil Bros stuff is in any way, shape, or form interesting to me at all. There are utility in understanding it to be able to push back, but for me, when it comes to practical application...
And this is why Rob will, whenever he comes across somebody who is philosophically competent, he will not do well. Somebody who has these sort of debate norms that Pisco wants and that I want. He's just not going to do well in the debate then. I mean, if he doesn't find it interesting, and he did say that there is some utility to understanding it, then why not use it too? Democrats shit in the box, Republicans shit all over your house. That's a difference. Now, to be clear, I am not talking about the substance of court packing or any of that. I'm really just trying to focus on the little things that I picked up when I was listening on this, and more so like surrounding debate norms and the debate that happened between Ryan and Pisco and Rob and Pisco.
Of real world change. I don't think that I have to know formal language and to be able to argue against the soundness versus the validity when I can say, dude, when you could.
But you are doing that whether you realize it or not. When you're talking to somebody in natural language, you're still doing that, right? You're still pointing out, well, that obviously doesn't follow, right? You're pointing to validity when you say something like that. Or when you say, well, that's not true, right? You're contesting one of their premises. Just because it's not formalized doesn't mean you're not doing that. You're still doing it, right? You're just doing it in a more messy way.
Just change definitions of words to whatever you want the entire time. Your argument is dog shit, and everyone could see it.
Wait, did he do that?
Words to whatever you want the entire time. Your argument is dog shit.
No, I can't comment on that. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't watch the whole 10-hour debate, but I don't know if Pisco was changing the meaning of terms in his argument throughout that debate. If he did do that, then that's fair, right? I mean, he's just literally changing his argument on the spot. He's changing the propositions within the argument, which would change the conclusion of the argument, at least the meaning of it.
Everyone could see it.
Well,
that's it.
Honestly, beyond feeling personally vindicated, this also vindicates Andrew Wilson's approach to debate, right? Because Andrew Wilson's take for the longest time is, if they're going to be doing this kind of like bullshit, I get to.
Andrew Wilson also takes debate tips from people like Avi and Ask Yourself, right? Who Pisco gets debate tips from, right? So they probably share a lot of debate norms, actually, Andrew and Pisco.
Redefine words. This is all just utterances. Words are whatever I say they mean. Then I'm not going to talk about anything else. I'm just going to expose that that's what they're doing and then say that's nonsense. And by the way, the debate.
Why is that? What is nonsense about giving an argument, a formal argument, and then explaining what you mean by the terms to be clear to your interlocutor that this is what I mean by the terms, and then giving that formula? Well, what is the issue with that? It's
all just utterances. Words are whatever I say they mean. Then I'm not going to talk about anything else. I'm just going to expose that that's what they're doing and then say that's nonsense. And by the way, the debate's now over because I don't have to go any further down the rainbow with you, which, like, you can criticize him for doing it, but truthfully, that's why your debate lasted 11 hours, is because it took 11 hours to get.
No, it probably took that long because Rob, who it seems like refuses to actually apply some of these debate norms, like semantic analysis. It seems like he did do that at some point, though. Linearity, going through the premises, asking for arguments for the premises, right? That's more so on Rob, in my view.
He's go to the point where he would admit, like, I'm just making all this shit up. I'm making it all up. I'm making it all.
Verbatim quote from Pisco, by the way.
All up. At one point, he said, what did he say? He said, deterrence can be satisfied if you put someone on notice.
Correct.
That's deterrence, right? Now, of course, he didn't realize that, like, his syllogism said.
When are these assholes going to start doing debates with independent libertarian voters? They may have debates with people like that. I'm not sure. I mean, you can check out their channel and check. I'm assuming they speak to moderates and, I mean, libertarians. They're like, at least in my experience, they're almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Overly represented online. There's a lot of libertarian debaters online.
Says you can't do it if it overshoots mild deterrence. So you can't court pack if it overshoots mildly putting someone on notice. And then later he's like, oh no, he realized that definition didn't work. So then he started using the normal definition of deterrence. Right? They shift constantly because he's just making it up. He's making it all up.
So
I don't know if he's necessarily making it up. Now, he could just be trying to, once again, I'm I'm not going to comment on the substance because maybe Ryan's right about that, right? Maybe he is just making it up as he goes to try to fit some sort of conclusion. Or maybe he's using words and he thinks he's trying to convey what he means by that word. And then maybe you give a counter example and you're like, okay, well, no, because what I want to say when I use this word would encapsulate something like that. So just to revise the definition slightly, I think this is what I mean, and give that sort of revised definition. I don't see an issue with that if somebody's doing that honestly. I think people probably do that all the time, right? They use words, and when somebody asks them, what do you mean by that? They may give a definition, or they may tell them what they mean by it. And then the other person, like I said, gives a counter example, and then they're like, okay, let me think about that. No, because maybe I think I want to say something like this and maybe revise a little bit. I don't know. I guess it depends on the person you're talking to, whether or not they're honest. And obviously, I don't think that they think Pisco is honest. So, like I said, Ryan might be right about that with Pisco. I'm not going to comment on that too much because, I mean, I don't know Pisco personally. I've seen a few debates from him. I've seen a few debates from Rob, Ryan. I don't know these guys super well, so.
The amount deterrence point, it's a great point to get to, right? This is in the second part of the debate about court packing. Like, I'm frustrated because when you announce, and he did this, he announced in his opening statement, actually the definitions of words are irrelevant. They're sort of subjective. So what I'm doing here is saying utterances and then explaining the meaning behind the utterance. So, for example,
why is that funny? What we do that when we have conversations with people, right? We will say a sentence and then we might like expand a little further. Like, this is what I mean by that. That's just like normal conversation. I don't know why that's funny.
Court pack doesn't mean court pack. Court pack is.
He thinks like normal conversation is fun, hilarious, I guess. I don't know. Have you never done that? Have you never been like, yeah, X, Y, and Z, and here's what I mean by Y there? Like, have you? Does that not happen in regular conversations with you, or do you just never have to explain what you mean ever to somebody? You're just always perfectly clear, and their mind is just perfectly aligned with yours, such that they're able to conceptualize exactly what you're saying and grasp the concepts, and they don't ever need further clarification. I mean,
sounds that come out of your mouth, and now I'll explain what my interpretation of those sounds are, right? So even if I accept that premise trying to go forward, then how do we get to a mutual understanding of what he means by that term in his syllogism, right? One of the easiest ways would be, I will read a definition of court pack, and you tell me if you agree or where you disagree. That would seem to be a tool for utility. Pisco says that's me appealing to a dictionary, which is equivocation. He kept using.
yeah, I mean, if he has a specific meaning that he's using in one of the premises of his argument, if you start talking about other definitions, I mean, it could be an equivocation if you're like attacking the premise, but you're using the dictionary definition instead of what the person means by that term. So it could be an equivocation. But why? Once again, it just seems like irrelevant to bring up the dictionary definition if Pisco is telling you what he means by that word in his argument.
That word, which by the way, he doesn't understand the meaning of that word either. He says that's equivocation, and then says he has a different.
It would be if you're like attacking his argument with a dictionary definition instead of what he means by the term, right? You're not actually attacking his argument anymore. You're attacking something else.
Definition of deterrence. Now, the problem is he does this all throughout the debate. He changes the definition of reciprocal. He changes the definition of norms. He changes the definition of partisan injurious. He keeps citing. So this time I'm
once again, that might be true. I didn't watch the whole fucking 10 hours. That might be true. I don't know.
fed up and I say, write the fucking definition down.
That's fair. That is fair. I agree with that. If you're having trouble understanding what somebody means by something, and you feel like they're being shifty, or maybe they're not even doing it intentionally, maybe you feel like they're just not being clear with what they're saying, I think that's perfectly fine. I do that, right? I do that. I think that's perfectly fair to ask somebody to repeat the definition so you can write it down.
Right? That Here is the definition of deterrence that he wrote down and gave me. You ready? If I said, Ryan, define cat, you would probably say something like a four-legged feline. Yeah, well, you would have something like this. It would start off with an affirmative statement, right? You ready? Here we go. Pisco's definition of the word deterrence, quote, as used in the argument is the concept of inducing in the mind of a set of actors knowledge that would tend in a reasonable person to lower the tendency to partake in a given action or at least put them on notice of a given consequence. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's like, it's so fucking, the or is what cracks me up the most there.
Because
right?
it's this really long sentence, and then there's an or that's but like that's so much easier to satisfy. Well, it's kind of like you're like, oh, what does it mean to be a bad person? It's like, well, if you sin against the church and you look at the definitions and you go into this deep Christian theological overview of what sin and morality means, and we'll have to go to 18 church seminars, that could make you a bad person. Or if you work on Sundays. It's like, oh, that it seems like the or is doing a lot of work.
Right.
You know, like that. The or seems very easy to satisfy. The first thing seems very complicated.
But once again, what's exactly the issue with? It just sounds like it sounds like he's defining the term for you. And what's the issue? I don't understand. What is the issue supposed to be exactly?
Now, the reason is, like, all of this...
Unless they're just thinking he's being, like, dishonest by adding the or there. But once again, that's just psychoanalyzing.
This is designed, right? It's designed for something very particular, right? And it's designed to make it look reciprocal and make it look just, right? So he had someone reach out to me that wanted, one of his Philbro buddies that wanted to explain.
I think that was Ask Yourself. And I don't think Pisco asked. Now I could be wrong about this. I don't think Pisco asked Ask Yourself to reach out to Rob. I think Ask Yourself saw the issue with something and reached out to him. I mean, I'm pretty sure he does that with a lot of people that he's watched debates of. So I don't think Pisco was like, hey, can you message him and ask him and can you explain this concept to him? Now maybe he did do that, but I mean, I think Ask Yourself does that with a lot of different people. I think he'll reach out to them saying, hey, I want to go over this subject with you. I think you're confused here.
There's an irony, and there were 2 points in the debate.
Fuck them. You owe those people fucking nothing.
Yeah,
you owe them nothing.
By the way, I have nothing bad to say about Avi as a person, and I think that,
I like Avi. Yeah,
I think probably what happened was
this is I guess almost like a post debate review, because both of these guys debated a liberal, I don't know if he calls himself progressive, I don't know, progressive streamer Pisco debate. The guy on the right debated him first, then the guy on the left debated Pisco as well about the same subject and about whether or not the guy on the right did good in his debate against Pisco. And like I said earlier, there were some things that were said in this that I just wanted to quickly comment on, and then I'll probably end the stream and then go live again and play some video games. But that's kind of the gist. I just wanted to comment on, I don't even remember because I watched it yesterday, what was said, but I remember listening to it and being super triggered by it. So I figured I'll just come on stream and talk about it for a little bit.
Because Avi's concept of moderating the debate was different than what my concept would be, which is just sort of sitting there and allowing the two people hash out, not to constantly interject as sort of an authority figure on the formal rules of logic.
That's not Avi. Well, I mean, maybe it's Avi's fault for responding to it, but Pisco kept asking Avi.
Right.
Pisco kept going to the moderator like, Avi, tell him my syllogism's good. Avi, tell him how P1 links up to P2, that sort of thing.
And in a debate, if I was moderator, I'd be like, I'm not debating.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know if a moderator should necessarily step in for something like that unless they're like looping really bad. Maybe then the moderator can step in and say something like, well, this is what this person's saying and this is what the other person's saying, just to try to get it back on track. Or maybe if they're looping, maybe, yeah, like I said, it would depend on the context. So I guess it just depends. It depends.
Like, but the problem was
I'm not
then
the
I had
judge.
no
I'm a
I had no
moderator.
choice, and it's regrettable. But I made two decisions with Avi that I thought I had to do. The first was I then started to ask to appeal to him because otherwise, I mean, I
turnabout's
just
fair
had
play.
to, and that's regrettable.
That seems
because
fair
then it
if
puts
the other
him as an
person's doing
authority
that.
figure.
Well, if you're doing it in the same sense that he's doing it, then that's probably fair.
Like, oh, he's the judge and the moderator. And so what he says goes. And that's a very an enviable position for me as Avi being someone that's coached Pisco, I believe. So it's very enviable for me to have to appeal to him as an authority because I don't view him that way. But in the context of
Now, I could be wrong about this too. I don't think it's not like I don't think Avi is like reaching out to Pisco. I do think Pisco sees the sort of value with how Avi and Ask Yourself and these other people debate. So I think Pisco is probably reaching out to them. So I guess if that's what he means by coaching, then sure. But it's not. I don't think it's the other way around. I don't think Avi's reaching out to Pisco to give him tips. I think it's reversed.
what's going on in the debate, and Pisco keeps saying. The other thing I had to do was I had to basically call Avi out as being in what I thought was bias, which isn't something that I want to do. But I noticed after I called him out, the bias seemed to lessen. And so it's like you have to make a decision at some point to be like, excuse me, I feel like you're weighing in heavily on one side here. And it's neither, both of those things were regrettable, but I made a strategic decision. I wasn't a dick about it. I didn't say, I hate you, Avi, this is bullshit. I just said, come on, man. It looks like you're heavily weighing in on one side of this. It's regrettable.
You have to do that.
That might be fair. Once again, if a moderator is doing that, but maybe there is a good reason. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I trust Avi more than Rob. There's probably a good reason why he was weighing in what seemed to be like more on the side of Pisco than Rob, because I know the debate norms that Pisco is trying to get across and the sort of debate norms that he wants. And I've seen Rob debate before. His debate norms is like no debate norms. Like, that's like the average debate norm online. There are no debate norms. It's just like, okay, well, we just can't cut each other off too much, right? If we cut each other off, we'll go to timed responses. Like that's like the extent of moderation that people like. For some reason, they love the messy shit show instead of being clear and concise and linear. Like they just don't have those sort of norms.
Sometimes, like I sometimes on Wick shows, I'll say like, if Wick's getting a little bit too deep in it, I'll be like, Wick, are you debating or moderating? Right? Because it's just like, if you feel like the role's not being respected, then you kind of need to say something. Otherwise, you just get painted into a corner. And like, for whatever reason, and maybe it's because Avi is like someone who's been teaching, Pisco logic and syllogisms and stuff like that. Pisco kept appealing to Avi to explain things to you, which is a very weird thing to do in a debate with a moderator. That's not what the moderator is for. Avi was doing it. So
yeah, once again, it's contextual, but I think generally speaking, that's probably fair, unless they are looping so hard to where they can't even move the conversation anywhere. Then a moderator probably should try to step in and make clear what's being said.
What else were you going to do? You can't sit there and say nothing about it. And it did lead to, like, for those of you who watched, there were many kill shots, but one of the great kill shots in this debate is Pisco's whole argument is that there will not be a severe consequence cascade. It's one of the most vulnerable premises. If there is a consequence cascade, if there is a lack of deterrence, then his argument fails on its face. It's actually two premises. So it's two core premises. And Rob turned to Avi and said, well, Avi, since Pisco's been appealing to you, I'll ask you a question. If the Democrats pack the court, do you think that makes it more or less likely that the Republicans will pack the court down the road? And he said, more likely. It's like, okay, done.
It's the end of the debate.
That's the end of the debate. Your premises are unsound on.
But I don't want to get too much into the substance, but I have a feeling Pisco would say that that's not a severe what did he say, severe legal consequence or something like that. If he says that, you're not falsifying the premise, right? He could just grant that that's going to happen, and then the argument still goes through if he doesn't consider that a severe legal consequence, whatever he means by severe legal consequence. This is what I mean. You probably should ask what he even means by that. Maybe ask for like a criteria if he has a criteria, and then see if Republicans doing that would meet that criteria.
Their faith.
But it sounds like they're just assuming that that would be a severe legal consequence, but maybe not with what he means in his argument, right? Once again, then you're just talking about something else. You're not talking about the argument if you're using a different meaning of that proposition than what he's trying to convey.
By the authority figure you've been appealing to all debate. So we're done.
And then he has to change the definition of deterrence, right? And then what Pisco's argument was, but providing a short-term increase in incentive in court packing, it will lead to a long-term deterrence, which I have two arguments to. The one, and probably more abstract, was like, but then you could claim everything that's the opposite of deterrence is deterrence, right? For example, let's say that I believe right now that we're not cracking down on thieves enough. We're too lenient on our sentencing, right? I want 20% harsher sentencing on thievery, right? So I say, here's how we will deter thievery. You ready? You ready for this, Ryan? Tell thieves right now for the next 2 years we refuse to prosecute them. You know what'll happen? Thievery will increase, which then...
Oh, I just saw Young Christian in my chat. Why is it not showing up in my multi-stream? That's weird. Sorry, Young Christian, if you're still here. I don't know, why is it not showing up in my multi-stream? Am I... Oh my god. Because I'm supposed to have both Twitch and YouTube chat in one place, but Streamlabs obviously isn't doing that, so... Sorry, Christian, if you're still here. What's up, buddy?
Will lead to people getting pissed, which will lead to them pushing for harder laws on thievery. Therefore, by incentivizing, by saying, we're going to stop prosecuting thievery, I am, quote, deterring thievery. Because I intuit that in the future, that might in fact do that. It is
Rob, that seems like rank speculation, and like you're just making up the definition of what deterrence is. Is that it couldn't possibly be the case that you're just rankly speculating and making up a definition with your anti-thievery program?
It's not really a debate. What they're talking about, I'll just kind of re-explain what I said earlier. So both this guy and this guy debated Pisco. He originally debated him first on, what was the proposition? It was something like, are Democrats justified in packing the court? That debate, I think, went horrible. And then this guy had a follow-up debate about that same proposition and another proposition, whether or not this guy did bad in the debate. So they're basically talking about the conversation that he had recently with Pisco, and I'm not necessarily I'm not trying to comment on the content of court packing. I'm more so trying to comment on debate norms, and just like little technical things that I think are useful.
Right, Rob? That seems
it's surreal. It was absolutely surreal to hear it going on. And the other part, though, and I'll see if I can pull up this clip. If there's one clip I was going to show, it would be this. There was a point where I was like, if that's true, right? If it's true that if packing the court is a deterrence, right? I said, let's make my own syllogism. One, packing the court's really bad. Yeah. Second, it is a moral good that we ought to deter court packing. Yes. Third, if Republicans packed the court today, it would deter court packing. He's like, yeah. I was like, conclusion, Republicans should pack the court today. And he's like, well, it's not valid. It's not sound. I said, why? He said, because there's other situations. If we
Right
set
back.
up a
I gotta
truth
use the
table,
restroom. Sorry.
I said, okay.
And we back.
Give you an example. He goes, Avi.
Well, because this is the thing, right? Like this is how do I put this right? I'm make sure I can explain this to people who don't move in these circles. Like when you meet a first-year law student, they're insufferable because they go around using legalese all the time. You know, they're like ip repsa locutor. You know, they'll say things like inter alia, like they want to use like legal Latin. They want to talk about, you know, shifting burdens of proof and, you know, the presumption of innocence and all, but they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They're just using all these terms all the time.
Correct.
Pisco's like a first-year philosophy student where he's like, oh, syllogisms, truth tables. Oh, this is like he's got all this like new tools in his tool belt, but he doesn't understand what their limits are and what they're for, right? Like nobody's going to be impressed.
What is... I still don't understand what the critique is. He's just saying, well, he's using words he doesn't know what they mean. I mean, I'm skeptical of that. Once again, what's the critique exactly?
That you have this syllogism. It doesn't move the needle for fucking anybody, especially if you're using proprietary definitions. And
it doesn't move the needle for anybody. Well, once again, what does that mean? Does that have anything to do with the soundness or validity of the argument? What's the critique? I don't understand.
The point that you were making, and I think technically the syllogism you came up with on the fly wasn't valid, technically speaking, but that's not the fucking point. The point you're making is anybody can make up a valid syllogism given a little bit of time if they get to make up what all the words mean, right? And
what does it mean to make up what a word means? Are you just saying this is okay? I see what Pisco was talking about. Like, it's like they think words have meanings independent of agents. Like we find the meanings of words under rocks or something. Like, I don't understand.
Anybody can make up a valid syllogism given a little bit of time.
Yeah, anybody can make a valid syllogism. That's true. Okay.
If they get to make up what all the words mean.
If they get to make up what the words mean. What is that doing there? What if they get to make up what the words mean? Okay, even if you get to, I don't know what he's saying. If you get to make up what the words mean. Once again, is he saying like there are meanings of words independent of what an agent is trying to convey? I don't.
Right. And
what's the critique, dude? I don't get it.
The central question with Pisco that you kept articulating really beautifully, I thought, is like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this, Pisco? Well,
if he's using the debate norms that I like, right? The reason he's doing that is to be clear and concise, right? He's telling you exactly what he means. Rob even said he wasn't being clear, so he wrote down what he means. That's perfectly fair. But that's, if I had to guess, that's what he's doing. He's trying to stay clear and linear, right?
Doing this to obfuscate the tyrannical approach that you have.
Yeah,
you
it's more psychoanalyzing.
To know that you're doing a partisan power grab. You want to cloak it in logic and goodness and fairness, and you're hoping that people are going to be unwilling to pick it apart. And that's all this was. That's all this, and it's all that it could be, because Pisco doesn't believe words have meaning. So what do we?
That seems dishonest. He thinks words don't have meaning. He does think words have meaning, right? He thinks they're just indexed to the person using the terms. They have meaning. So what the fuck does he think meaning is? What, like, where? Because, like, a lot of other views, I don't even know what they're trying to say. Meaning is independent of how a person uses a term, or independent of how people use terms. Like, I don't even know what you're trying to say. But that either seems dishonest or confused, because Pisco does think that the words have meaning, right? unless he's just equivocating on meaning, and it sounds like, I mean, I think he's a moral realist, so maybe he's like a realist about meaning too. If that is a thing where you think, like I said, that meaning exists independent of agents or stances or minds. But once again, that would just be an equivocation on what he means by meaning. And it sounds like gibberish, at least to me.
Talking about here, like what's the exercise we're going through? So I mean, it was, I thought, wildly exposing for somebody that who spent so much time and effort on this PR campaign of his pro-court packing campaign, and this idiotic syllogism that he's been trotting around as if it was going to move the needle, and also as if people don't see what he's up to.
Yeah, it's
more psychoanalyzing.
Like I will show that clip here later if I can find it, but to go back to start the actual part of talking about your debate was important because it illustrated something important. I think that I made credible arguments as to why I thought you did good in the debate. Obviously, I don't think you did perfect. I don't think I did perfect last night.
No such thing as perfect.
There was an intuition that we were talking about net good or bad. I definitely think you did net good. I definitely think you won the debate. I started off by talking about goals that you could set yourself outside the scope of just winning an individual prompt, right? And I said that I certainly think you did that. You exposed the radical
goals outside of the individual prompt. Right. Okay. So, yeah, you could do that, but then once again, it seems like you're not engaging with what you agreed to debate.
Agenda that Pisco had, and that you exposed it in the easiest way, right? Because you offered to debate the exact prompt he wanted, or well, you were debating the prompt, but the exact plan within the prompt he wanted, if he would disavow the Ro Khanna plan that went beyond reciprocation.
That's not that wasn't relevant to the debate prompt. That's a derail.
Reciprocity, and he would not do it. And then your argument was, see, this is his honest opinion, which I want to debate his honest opinion, which, by the way, found within the scope. I made some arguments that I thought.
Yeah, but you in the debate, didn't he say we can do that after we get a resolution on this debate proposition? Why the fuck would we just say fuck the original debate proposition that we both agreed to, and let's talk about a completely different debate proposition? Why would he do that? I wouldn't do that. I'd be like, no, we came here to debate this. We're sticking to this. And then he didn't even have to, right? I don't think he's obligated to debate the second debate prompt that he just brought up. I don't think he's like obligated to.
There just was an inability to handle. For example, we have hearings in the Foreign Affairs Committee yesterday, correct? Yes, okay. Let's say the topic of that is foreign affairs. But within that, if Democrats were able to successfully get out of Marco Rubio that he and Donald Trump committed a financial crime, wouldn't Democrats say, those Democrats did good in the hearing? Even though the topic of the hearing, the agreed about topic, was foreign affairs and nothing to do with it. All Pisco and Avi both concede, yes, that's the case. If in a presidential debate, Kamala Harris gets asked a question about foreign policy, and she says, Donald Trump assaulted a woman and Epstein files. And that means that 80% of the people watching think she won the debate. Would Democrats say she did good in the debate? Yes. Pisco hand waves all this away and says, no, the style of debate we do in modern day debate is different. In the hearing, in presidential.
Yeah, I was about to say you could just index different norms depending on the context that you're in. I don't see what the issue with that would be.
Debates, you could do good while ignoring the topic, but you can't in modern day debate. That's different. And the argument that he's articulating, which is just nonsensical, and I also argue, by the way, you were arguing the topic, but the argument that he makes is it doesn't matter if you're arguing the topic. I'll go back to what I said about like formal policy debate in college, right? Here's how it works. You have a broad topic, a broad resolution for the entire year. Then the affirmative takes a plan, and the strategic nature of what the affirmative is doing is trying to have a plan that's as narrowly tailored as possible to fit within the confines of affirming the resolution. The negative then has to argue the affirmative plan. So, for example, in this case, it would be if this was a collegiate debate, you saying Ro Khanna's plan is shit. If I was the affirmative, I'd say, my plan's not Ro Khanna's plan. You're not responsive to what I'm saying. That's not the style of debate we do here. That's
No.
not the style debate.
Yeah, right. It's bad debate norms, right? You want to talk about a million other things other than the agreed upon debate proposition. I just take that to be like bad norms. It just gets messy. It doesn't seem like the thing you agreed to debate upon. It could get resolved, right? But it seems like it raises the likelihood that it's not going to get resolved if you're just okay with talking about a bunch of different propositions that might be related to a given debate proposition, but are ultimately irrelevant because maybe these other debate propositions, whether you think they're true or false or whatever, maybe you saying that those things are true or false doesn't turn on whether or not the original debate proposition is true or false, right? So it could just be completely irrelevant. It just seems like you like messy, non-linear debate norms, which is fine, I guess, but god damn, it's horrible. I don't know why people like that. Yeah, I like messy debates where nothing gets resolved and we just talk about a million things. The audience seems to really enjoy it. I think that's what it is. It's like a just rhetoric at that point. Who has the best rhetoric when it comes to debating a million things at once? And that's like Destiny style debating. Which is fine. It is entertaining sometimes, but it's just messy. I don't typically like those sort of debates.
But that's collegiate debate, right? Pisco's arguing that's the way it should be, though, basically. The focus should be on my plan, not on what my real plan is that I talked about yesterday, only the plan that I'm outlining here. And what's his plan? The syllogism. That's what he wants to talk about, the syllogism, right?
That's his argument for the debate proposition, right? We want to justify our beliefs, right? Right. So he believes that the Democrats are justified in court packing, so he gives an argument for that. The only difference is he's not doing it in natural language. He's giving you a formal argument. Like, you should be able to just dissect the fuck out of it, but instead you want to cry about it? I don't understand. It's the same thing, except it's just formalized, right? Whenever we justify our views, our positions, our beliefs, whatever you want to say, we give arguments for those, right? All he did was formalize it. So of course he's going to want to focus on his argument to show that the proposition he's affirming is true. Of course, because he brought an argument. It's just formalized.
And he says, why Ryan's so shitty is this. He saw the syllogism. He knew what I interpreted as the resolution, and yet he didn't engage. And that's what's bad faith. Okay.
That seems fair. Yeah, that seems fair. I mean, you had the argument before the debate, and you refused to engage with it the whole debate. Well, not the whole debate. He did quickly say, "I disagree with P5," and then they talked about it for like 2 minutes, and then they just went off the rails again.
Now, fast forward 3 hours. We get to the second part of the debate. What does the motherfucker do immediately? I'm going to change my syllogism. In his opening statement. And I'm like, you motherfucker, you just had the balls to say. Because I was like, so you now changed the word court packing when you know that that's one of the weakest parts in this syllogism. That you said that what happened to Merrick Garland was court packing. Because if I could prove it wasn't court packing, the premise goes away and you lose. So you know that that's where a large thrust of my attacks. Pete, I talked to you beforehand, Ryan. What did I say? Premise 2, premise 5.
Yeah.
Now he changes premise 2. I change it. And all of the, and he appeals to Avi, and Avi's like, well, because basically this is why it was allowed to be changed. Because here's the deal, man. After all, court packing's just an utterance. And so what's the important part is articulating the meaning behind the utterance. So
Yeah, that's fair. What the fuck? Yeah. So it is the same argument. All he did was to make it a little more clear, instead of using the words court packing, he just took out those words and replaced those words with what he means by court packing. So it's the same argument, right? It means the same thing. It's just different words. Why are we crying and laughing about that? That's embarrassing. It's the same argument.
even before the debate starts, before you've said one word, Rob, in his opening statement, he is now clarifying what the utterance means. To which my response, in addition to this is fucking insane, is, but why wouldn't he do that before the debate? It would be different in the context of a back and forth for like 20 minutes. He says, wait a minute. Let me clarify the utterance. But instead, he changes the utterance before I've had a chance to speak. Almost like exactly what he accused you of doing. And
How is that? How is giving your interlocutor more clarity like insane or dishonest? I don't get it. You really have an issue with him just using different words that mean the same thing? What the fuck? What is this complaint?
Intentional sandbag. He knew that I
How is that sandbagging? It means the same thing.
knew what he was defining court packing as, and so he changed it at the
Yeah.
last minute.
Wait.
I knew what he was defining court packing as, and so he changed it at the
Yeah.
last minute.
Oh, okay. So Rob is saying that he changed the meaning. Well, that's not what. Oh, okay. Hold on. Because now he's saying that the meaning did change, right? Now that would be a little different, right? Because now it is a different argument. But that's not what he said. He said that, well, Avi stepped in and said that it was okay because they're just utterances. They mean the same thing. So which is it? Did the meaning change or is it the same? Because if it's the same meaning, what the fuck is the issue? It's just different. It's just different words that mean the same thing. But if he did change the argument, I don't know if he's like obligated to tell you, like, yeah, I tweaked it a little bit. I noticed that it's not, I wasn't being clear with what my view was or what I meant by this language, and I wanted to make it a little more clear. That's being charitable, right? Or maybe Pisco was being dishonest when he did that. Maybe he knew, well, Rob knows my definition of court packing, so I'm going to switch it up just a little bit so the critique that I know he's going to run will not go through. So, I mean, that's possible as well. Once again, I'm trying not to psychoanalyze, but I'm also trying to be charitable. But we got to figure out, does it mean the same thing or does it not? If it means the same thing, what's the fucking complaint, dude?
That's what they did. And so I don't mind, by the way. Fuck it. I don't care. I'll argue why it's bad within the context. But the idea that I'm going to be like, oh, this dude's not even engaging in the agreed upon. This is sandbagging. This is terribly unethical, blah, blah, blah. No, it's just your shit. But I'm not going to sit here and wax on. But the balls to wax on for a week about how meanie of a person you are because you sandbag, blah, blah, blah. And the motherfucker does it immediately after arguing it for 3 hours.
Well, I've got a bunch of subsidiary points, but I think this is a good time to make the broader point. The reason I said I don't really care, and by the way, I appreciate you going to bat for me, but I don't really care how the first half of that debate went. Not even the first half, the first third, no, quarter. Jesus, 11 hours. The first, about whether I did good.
That is crazy.
I know I did good. I don't really care. But B, nothing could be done to better vindicate my approach to that debate than actually going through the painstaking effort of getting him to admit that he made up all his definitions, that it's all preferences, that it's all bullshit, that the syllogism doesn't mean anything.
That I can't tell if that's intentionally dishonest or not. What do you mean it doesn't mean anything, or it's all just preferences, or what was the other thing he said?
Definitions, that it's all
he made up all of his definitions. It doesn't sound like a substantive critique, right? He's just saying, well, your meta ethics seem subjectivist and you're using terms in a non-standard way in your argument. What's the critique though, right? I keep saying that. What's the issue?
Is that it's all bullshit, that the syllogism doesn't mean anything, to go through that exercise the way you did. Nothing could be more vindicating. And the reason is I agreed to debate him in an hour format, right? Now, he set forth this syllogism, and then he has this strategy of defending the syllogism, which everyone who watched did last night, which is to make conversation impossible, to make conversation completely impossible at every turn. That's his main tactic, right? There is nothing on God's green earth you could do to get to the bottom of that syllogism in an hour. It's not.
Why? I have seen people do it in less than 10 minutes with syllogisms with more premises, right? I don't get it.
Possible. Not with somebody who's having that approach.
Not possible. Under what modality?
To conversation, right? Because you guys spent an hour on whether or not, like, on like what the word injury meant, basically. I mean, like everything took an hour. So you want to talk about like sandbagging and bad faith shit. What's his meta tactic? His meta tactic is, I think court packing is good. Here's my syllogism. Then we have a debate that never gets anywhere because it can't, because there's no way to do this in an hour, because I'm going to obfuscate everyone. And people.
Why does he keep saying like there's no way to go through an argument in an hour? Does he think if he gave it a natural language, he would be able to go through it in an hour? If so, what's the difference? I feel like if somebody formalizes an argument, it would intuitively it seems like you would be able to get through it quicker, right? Because you can see it right in front of you. You could just walk through it. If somebody's giving an argument in natural language, things get really messy, right? It can go anywhere. It can go all over the place. It's not structured.
Walk away thinking, oh, there's good points on both sides.
That's exactly the point.
Right?
It seems that's why, for example, why did he even put the word court packing? If he's like, it doesn't matter if what happened to Merrick Garland was court packing or not. Why do you think he chose the word court packing though? Because he knows that the average person's like, oh, if one side court packed, the other side gets to court pack. He knows that that's something that most people will default to. So he uses the word court packing. As soon as you get into like, wait a minute, this is a minority definition in the extreme. That's not how we've ever really viewed court packing. He knows that most people will be like, oh, if it's not court packing, you get to do whatever that is back to them, but you don't get to do court packing. That's a step beyond. And so
That sounds like an equivocation on court packing, at least with what Pisco means.
he plays fast and loose with it. When it benefits him, he'll say it's court packing. When you prove that that's a bad definition, therefore the syllogism falls apart, he says it doesn't matter if it's court packing.
What is a bad definition? By bad definition, does he just mean not what people typically mean by the word?
That's not necessary. And so, like, I agree with you, by the way, that part of me was, I would have fucking debated another 5 hours. No doubt in my mind, because what I was trying to illustrate was just how fucking slimy he was.
10 hours is crazy.
And to make the point, this is why doing an hour debate with him, you get nowhere. And it's so frustrating because it'll just be like the littlest. Like, here's an example of something that happened. At the end of the debate, I'm like, Pisco, basically what you're saying is this. The reason Democrats should pack the court is because, according to your preferences, it's good. And he's like, well, because of a stance-dependent inquiry, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, after all, I'm an anti-realist. I was like, Pisco, I'm a redneck. That means nothing to me. My guess is the majority of the audience doesn't know what the fuck you mean by anti-realist. So I'm trying to clearly articulate in a way that everyone can understand your position. I'll ask you again. It takes like 6 minutes, and then finally he's like, yes, that's another way of saying what I'm saying. Now, why did we have to fight for 6 minutes? Why didn't you?
Probably because it seems super reductive to just say, well, your view is just, it's justified because of my preferences. He probably wants to give like motivating reasons for why he has those preferences and why other people either do or should share those sort of preferences. I'm assuming, right? I'm assuming there's a little more to that.
Just say, yeah.
That's
my position.
And by the way, if that comes up again, I have a conversation on my stream with Lance Bush, who's like, he's the philosopher where all the anti-realists are getting their talking points from. And I asked Lance, because Lance is a very honest guy. I was like, so when you say stance dependent, what you mean is that you have a set of values and preferences, and that's what you base your morality on. And he's like, yeah, and values and preferences reduces to preferences. And he's like, yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
And when it got down to it, that's what Pisco said.
Because that's the position. It's not like, I'm not saying that Lance admitted something like catastrophic. Right. I'm saying like Lance was honest about what the position is. If you're an anti-realist, then it's dependent on your stances, and your stances are dependent on your preferences.
So what, like the entire idea of Pisco appealing to neutrality or fairness.
But what's the issue with that? What's the issue with that sort of meta ethic? What's this guy saying in chat? Everybody listen. The guy in the black hat, he knows how to think for us Democrat people. He knows what we're going to say or do or anything. He's a wonderful psychic. He has been psychoanalyzing a lot. I will say that.
It's completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason we get here is this, right? There's two different concepts, right? There's a concept of like tit for tat, of making whole. Something bad happened, and so a reciprocal action is made to sort of even the scales, right? What we don't say is this, a norm was violated because Republicans rejected blue slips. Therefore, Democrats get to add 50 justices. We would say, whoa, that's not even, right? Pisco is intended.
But Rob, I've defined blue slip as court packing.
Right.
So
that's right.
So since I've defined it as court packing, that's reciprocal.
Pisco, what he's doing is he's saying we should literally pack the court with up to 4 seats, right? That's already vastly disproportional, which he admits. He ends up admitting. Also, we should end the filibuster. Also, we should give legislative rules over the court. Also, we should add 2 states. Also, vote blue no matter who. We should do that, right? Also, we should ignore all of the insurrections that I used to complain about. We should ignore that. All of these things that he's doing. Also, we should keep our opponents off the ballot. Yeah. Right? He's suggesting all of this simultaneously. Now, this is obviously hugely beyond any reasonable charitable interpretation of equality or fairness. Right?
If he's for all of those things, why not just go one by one and ask him to debate each of those propositions individually? Like, hey, can we debate, what was one of the things he mentioned? Packing the court with 4 more justices. Is that one of the positions? I don't know. Why not ask him to debate that specific proposition? Once you guys do that debate, move on to the next proposition. Just keep doing that for all the propositions that you disagree with him on.
It's clear, or justice. It's beyond that. And so it's like, Pisco, if the premise here is that it's about fairness, clearly your worldview must be rejected. He says, no, it's more than that. Because even though we go beyond the scope of proportionality, the reason we're going beyond the scope is because we're good. Because we're good.
And why are we good? Because that's our preference.
So, and one of the things, like, again, because I don't formally debate the Phil Bros shit, like the idea of a syllogism being valid versus should it be something that we accept the conclusion of being 2 completely different things. Think of this. This is his premise 1. He says, if there was injurious partisan Supreme Court packing, he has proprietary definitions for injurious, proprietary definition for partisan, proprietary definition for Supreme Court packing, and there's no effective way to reverse it without court packing. He literally said that if all justices died in a plane wreck tomorrow and we had 9 justices that were Democrats were in charge and appointed them, that still would not be sufficient to reverse the injury. More than every justice being Democrat would be what's necessary, right? Then he says, and the proposed reciprocal, he has a proprietary definition of reciprocal, packing doesn't overshoot beyond mild deterrence. Now that's key, because he's implying it clearly overshoots.
See, this is all like substantive stuff that I'm not going to comment on.
Shoots reciprocity, that's why he's saying overshoot. Why does it matter?
To be clear, the reason I'm not commenting on it is because I don't take a view on it.
What your reasoning is. Could I not rewrite the syllogism to say this? And the proposed reciprocal court packing doesn't overshoot beyond 500 justices. Still valid premise.
That's my definition of mild deterrence.
Right? Well, I don't even have to say mild deterrence.
Yeah.
I could literally just say, all that really is, okay, it goes beyond proportionality.
Are they learning that they can make arguments themselves in real time? What's happening here? I can change the premise to something else. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess you could. But then you're not talking about his argument anymore. You're talking about something else. You're making your own argument. What's the point?
But it's for a good reason. My good reason is I say this: the court packing is good. Forget fairness, forget reciprocity. It's good because I think abortion murders babies. And so therefore we should pack the fucking court to make sure all abortion's illegal. Now, who's to say I'm wrong? If all values are subjective, there's no reason to prefer the value of fairness.
That doesn't follow. Right? What do you mean there's no reason, right? Reason is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. He does have reasons, right? He probably does have reasons. I won't say he definitely does, because like I said, I don't know his view. But I'm assuming he would say, well, I do have reasons, right? They're just not these weird, spooky, stance independent reasons, whatever the fuck that means. So I would need to get clear on what he means by there is no reason, right? What does he mean by no reason there?
Or to make sure all abortion's illegal. Now, who's to say I'm wrong? If all values are subjective, there's no reason to prefer the value of fairness. There's no reason to prefer the values of pro-choice or anything. All that matters is, to me, I've said my side is good, therefore it justifies me breaking. Why are norms important? Norms are just your subjective value that, for whatever reason, I asked Pisco, I said, why? What is it? Why do you think norms are important? You know what he said? I don't know, the genetics I was born with, how I was raised.
That's a valid response to what you're saying. What are you even asking? Why are norms important? Are you asking why I value norms? Are you asking for a causal explanation of why I have the values I have? What are you asking for when you say, why are norms important? Are you asking for other values that I might have that are associated with that value? What are you asking? If you're asking for a causal explanation of why he has the values he has, he gave you the response directly. Now, if you're asking something else like, what other values do you have such that you also have this value? Or maybe he thinks that value is fundamental, right? That there is no further value that explains that specific value, right?
Everything. Words are completely subjective.
I was having this conversation with my fiance yesterday. What is he asking when he says, why is that value important? What are you asking? Are you asking why? Once again, it sounds like you're asking, why do you value what you value? And once again, that sounds like you're asking for a causal explanation of why I have the values I have. If you're asking something else, you gotta get more clear. What the fuck are you asking?
Morality is completely subjective. And it's like, even if you want, that's completely subjective. Morality is complete. Everything. Words are completely subjective. Morality.
What does it mean for a word to be objective? Do we find words and the meanings of words out in the world? Do we find definitions in my mailbox? Do we find words like in coal mines? What are we saying? Like if words and meaning aren't subjective, what does it mean for them to be objective?
Is completely subjective. And it's like, even if you want.
And same thing with the morality thing. What's the issue if he is a subjectivist? What's the issue with him being a subjectivist? What's the critique? Bobby, I have no clue what you're talking about in the comments, buddy. I have no clue what you're talking about. I don't know if you're talking to me or if you're just talking, but thanks for thanks for being here, man.
It's the equivalent of this. I remember having this argument. I had this friend that was obsessed with this concept when I used to drink with him, that free will doesn't exist. And like, we would have these debates, and eventually I'd be like, I don't care, because even if you're right, then it's all irrelevant. So I just don't care. You could reductive everything. Rob, did you really just make the choice to grab for that Coors Light? Or do you just have the illusion that you reached for the Coors Light? I don't care. That's the answer. It's the same with this shit. If you're going to make it so reductive, that's like, basically you're just saying might makes right. Whatever the fuck I feel is good, fuck you.
Well,
that doesn't follow. Clearly doesn't follow. If morality is subjective, then might makes right. That clearly doesn't follow.
I mean, how about this? This is the thing about logical validity. Logical validity just means the symbols are in the right place. You know, if A, then B, therefore A, conclusion B. If you know a man named Pisco, then he is in possession of violent and terrible child exploitative materials. I know a guy named Pisco. Conclusion, he is currently in possession of violent and terrible child exploitative materials. That is a
That's true. I heard that too.
Valid syllogism. It's valid because the symbols are in the right place. That's all valid means.
Yeah.
The symbols are in the right place. Now, you might ask me, how are you defining child exploitative materials? And I say, that's the thing. I have a proprietary definition for child exploited materials. I actually mean comic books. Now, you might say, isn't it a little bit weird to use the phrase child exploited materials when you meant comic books? And I'd say, well, it's just an utterance. But I would.
I'm explaining what it, right.
Yeah, I'd really.
You can, oh my God, but it's so easy to deflate that kind of, if he thinks Pisco is trying to be rhetorical, right, by using certain words in his argument, right, in the example that he just gave, it's so easy to deflate that sort of rhetoric, right? Like, oh, your argument is, if I know a guy named Pisco, then he has CP. I know a guy named Pisco, therefore he has CP or something. And what I mean by CP is comic books. You could just point out to everybody listening that if we just take what he means by CP and replace that with comic books, then there is no issue, right? It's trivial if he has comic books that the argument is sound. Well, I mean, obviously you'd push back on P1 because just because you know a guy named Pisco, it doesn't mean he has comic books, right? You would need a supporting argument for P1. But the point is, it's very easy if you feel like somebody's trying to be rhetorical with using certain language to deflate that rhetoric by pointing out what is actually happening, right? And what the words actually are being used to convey. It's very simple. I mean, I do that all the time, right? Once you figure out what somebody means, it's like when people say, well, yeah, that's just arbitrary. Like, just to give a quick example, I was talking to somebody about, it had something to do with God, but we were talking about, I think, like the beginning of the universe or something. And I was saying, well, yeah, there could be other explanations, right? Maybe there is no explanation for why there is something rather than nothing. Let's just put it that way to make it simple. Maybe there is no reason, right? It just is that way. And he said, well, that's just arbitrary. And I said, well, by arbitrary, are you just saying that there is no further explanation? And the person said, yes. Well, then I'm like, you're just describing the view. You're just like repeating what I just said to you back to me by using a different word that sounds rhetorically effective, right? It's arbitrary. Oh, we don't want it to be arbitrary. But once you clarify, you're just saying that there is no explanation. You're just describing the view. You're not actually critiquing the view. You're just using this word to, it sounds like, rhetorically use it against the view. But that's all it is. It just becomes rhetoric at that point.
I'd like to use the phrase child exploited materials rather than comic books because I feel like it has a little punch. It might get me across the finish line on my political goals. And that I'm being a little bit of a dick here, but that's the level of disingenuous he was being with.
That's exactly.
And this is why
once again, that's psychoanalyzing, but that might be true. But how the fuck are you going to go about showing that? I don't know, because I don't get the vibe that Pisco is like trying to be deceptive.
Our debate where I can't do what you did. It's not an option.
Once again, could be wrong. Maybe he is.
I was like, how do I explain to the audience in a way that's going to resonate quickly what's really happening here? Right? Like, and the realization I came to is Pisco's trying to debate trap me with this nonsense fucking syllogism and his proprietary.
I'm muted. Yeah, he's trying to debate trap me by putting his argument formally for me to rip to shreds, right? But instead, I'm just going to ignore it. That's the debate trap. Giving a formal argument to your interlocutor before the debate so they have time to dissect it. It's insane, dude. It's so insane.
Definitions, and I don't have to be trapped. I don't have to accept his trap. I can do something different. And yeah,
you can just like not talk about the justification that he has for the debate proposition, right? You could just you could just like the whole debate just scream in the mic and wave your hands like this. You could do that. That is true.
Honestly, nothing could have vindicated that decision more than watching the fact that A, he is full of shit, but B, he's going to obfuscate to the point where it takes 11 hours to get to the fucking point.
And by the way, it would have been longer, but once Avi left, he quickly rage quit because he couldn't go back.
Shit, I would have rage quit way before that. I would have been the first to rage quit. 10 hours is crazy.
Person that was saving him the whole time. I'm gonna play this clip. I thought this is one of the highlights. There's a million, and I don't. Poor Black Elk, he could clip this for the next 5 years, I think. But all right, let me get this clip up.
Black Elk needs a raise.
He does. Get your super chats in, folks, so I can give Black Elk a raise. All right, here we go. What Democrats would do. They just hadn't had their chance yet. So Republicans were just preemptively. Secondly, I think
This
Republicans.
Biden
Let me
thing
finish.
has
Let me
done so
finish.
many
Let me
times,
finish.
it's crazy.
Let me finish. Second, I think Republicans who are not currently packing the Supreme Court, who you have no proof that they would in the future, but you're like, well, maybe they would. That's my belief. I think the same is true of Democrats because Democrats are actually announcing it. And so in order to deter that, I think Republicans should pack the court now. That would deter it.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be justified in doing it
Why not?
because you don't have a justification for it.
Remember, Pisco will later say, when I say justify, I just mean it's good according to my preferences.
Yeah.
So he's saying you don't have a yes, I do. It's good according to my preferences.
Yeah, my preference is Republicans retain power and specifically screw you over Pisco.
Once again, oh my God, it's so low tier. It's not a critique to just point out his meta ethic is subjectivist, right? And you could say this is my preferences. You could do that, right? But obviously the other person, if they're competent and smart, they're going to run reductios or other entailments from the justification that you're giving, right? That's what somebody that's competent would do. They would say, okay, yeah, it is your preference, and this is the reason why you have that view. Well, it seems like if these are the reasons that make this justified, well, these reasons are also consistent with this case that seems fucking crazy, right? So by your own criteria for justification, why you have the preferences you do, you would also have to prefer this, right? This fucking insane view, right? Somebody that's competent is going to do something like that. But no, I guess just saying my preferences is like a defeater. I don't fucking know. I think that's what a lot of these people think. They think if they just say, well, your view is subjectivist, that's a critique. I don't know. It's not an argument for sure. It doesn't show the view is false.
That's my preference.
But it gets even better. Listen, I think that court packing is horrible. Do you agree? Premise one.
Unless it's a justified court packing.
Court packing in general is terrible.
All else equal, I agree it's bad.
Okay. Number two, it would be a huge positive thing that we should try to achieve to end all court packing.
Yeah, I think it would be hugely positive to end it.
Number three, Republicans packing the court now will lead to deterrence.
I don't necessarily agree with that now.
Why not? By the same rationale that Democrats packing the court will lead to deterrence, Republicans packing the court will lead to deterrence.
Well, I suppose to the extent that it's inducing the Democrats to do this, like, great big struggle for the Supreme Court, perhaps. But in general, it wouldn't be justified for the other reasons, right?
It doesn't matter. We're not talking about your syllogism. We're talking about mine. We're talking about mine. You've already accepted premise one. You accepted premise two. Premise three, you have to admit, yes, it would deter court packing. Four, therefore, Republicans should pack the court.
No, that doesn't follow.
Why not?
That clearly doesn't follow. It was like P, Q, R, therefore S. They're just nowhere does the conclusion. Nowhere in the premises is the conclusion, right?
You agreed
It's
to
not
the
even
syllogism.
valid.
You just agreed.
It's not valid.
It's not
That's
valid.
right.
Why not? Premise one, court packing back.
What do you mean? Because what's the inference rule? It's clearly not valid. You could probably make it. You could probably try to walk him through what he's trying to say and make it valid, but that's clearly not valid.
That we should reject, right?
So all else equal, as amended, right? All else equal, court packing bad.
Okay,
Yeah.
premise two. If Republicans pack the court now, it would deter court packing in the future and have a chance to end it.
In the way that we're describing, I might even grant that.
Okay, premise three. It is a noble goal and something we should do to end court packing.
All else equal, again, in general, yes.
And therefore, conclusion: Republicans should pack the court.
It's invalid.
Why is it invalid?
I don't know what to tell you.
Why is it invalid? Tell me.
Because the conclusion doesn't follow from the premises.
Why doesn't it? It absolutely. Avi, does the conclusion follow from the premises? Now,
The bad move to ask Avi that. He's obviously going to say no.
I can skip ahead. Avi gives his spiel, which unfortunately I was appealing
Yeah,
to.
skip ahead.
It's
probably
not
smart.
to belabor
That's
the
probably
point,
smart.
but listen once it gets back to Pisco. Why it's not the case. If it is a goal, something we should shoot for to deter court packing, and if Republicans packing the court now leads to ultimate deterrence, right? Therefore, Republicans should pack the court to lead to ultimate deterrence.
Yeah,
Pretty
but I'm just not gonna bite.
I would need to hear that again, but that sounded like it could possibly be valid. I would need to hear that again, but that sounded better. I don't care to rewind it, but it's fine. It's fine.
On some of the premises that are missing there, and
Like
some
what?
of the
Go
notions
ahead.
that
Give me an
would be
example.
required.
Give me an example.
Yeah. So one is
Can you pause for a
an
second?
effective remedy that it might be done in such a way.
Again, just notice how this works. When Pisco creates a syllogism, if you want to say a premise is a problem, you got to spend 8 hours arguing about why the premise is a problem. When you construct a syllogism, he's like, oh, I don't accept that. You have to convince me. The burden of proof is on you to convince me of the premise. But when I assert a premise,
that's your problem. I'm sorry, you're procedurally bad at this, right? Because the burden would be on Pisco, right? If you don't accept premise one, you don't have to sit there and let him ask you questions about your view, right? It's his argument. You should ask him for the argument for premise one if you don't accept it. That's your fault for letting him. It sounds like you're saying, well, I let him burden shift, so I should be able to burden shift as well. It's like, okay, oh, that's your fault.
The burden of proof is on you to disprove it.
We spent 3 hours on premise two. Yeah. On one of the premise two, we spent 3.
And it's not your burden. If he's giving an argument, it's not your burden to show that a premise is false. I don't think that that's your burden, right? Now, if you are trying to convince that person, the burden or the audience or whatever the case may be, the person giving the argument, it is their burden to, and that's a good debate norm, right? It is their burden if your interlocutor doesn't accept P1 to give the supporting argument for P1.
Hours.
Well, so, and look, again, like, I just want to make sure this point is clear. If this was a intellectual exercise and it was just like a dick measuring contest, and we're like, okay, who's smarter? Let's go out there and debate. I wouldn't get so hot under the collar about it. But he's using this to propose the tyrannical imposition of power over me and my family, right? Like, this is like, it's a little bit, if someone's like, hey, I
wonder if they could formalize an argument for that, right? That whatever Pisco is advocating for, that it is tyrannical. And I wonder exactly how they're using tyrannical there, right? But a competent person would ask them, hey, when you say this person's view is tyrannical, what do you mean by tyrannical, right? Even if you are using a proprietary definition. You're just asking what they mean.
This syllogism that proves that I think that God exists or God doesn't exist. And like, that's heavy stuff, but it's intellectual, and let's have a conversation about it, right? It's heavy, but at least it's intellectual. Pisco's like, I think I should get to control the lives of you and your family and do what I want to them. And I'm not kidding. I actually think the government should do this to you. Let's talk about my syllogism. It's like, get fucked, tyrant. Get fucked, tyrant.
And then as soon as the shoe's on the other foot, like even with setting this up, even with just being able to define words how he can, look how he stumbles in real time. Just watch this. I could not believe when this was happening. Listen.
And Republicans being as they are, that Democrats won't get the opportunity to respond in kind. And I do think that Republicans are capable of doing.
Now, do you hear that? The reason this would be bad was because this would lead to Republicans entrenching power, and Democrats would never get power. But Democrats wouldn't do that.
Yeah, it would lead to Republicans doing the thing that he would like Democrats to do.
But he's like, But if Democrats do it, no. The Republicans could still have an option to get power eventually. But if Republicans do the exact same thing, it would be impossible for Democrats to get power. And my whole point is leave him keep talking, because it's like, okay, all the arguments you made against my syllogism, guess what, Pisco? They apply against your syllogism. So watch what he does here.
Nah.
Wait, the arguments against your syllogism. I'm just trying. I don't know Pisco's syllogism off the top of my head, so I'm trying to think, because the conclusion of his argument was something like we should get rid of court packing or something like that. And I'm trying to figure out which premise of Pisco's argument that would falsify. I would need to see it again, if it even does.
So same argument could be made about your syllogism.
Yeah,
So
no,
wait.
doesn't follow.
I promise I'll shut up then. Every argument Pisco's about to make would be a defeater to his syllogism as well. Democrats could set it up in a way that Republicans would never get power. Why can Republicans do it but not Democrats? Go ahead, explain why.
Well, wait, hang on a second. That's nowhere in my argument or in your hypothetical argument.
You just said that a defeater to my syllogism.
You should prepare. So this is what you should do. Okay. This is what you should do. All right. You should take some time. You should take some time. You should take some time and think about it, and then write it out.
I am thinking
and we
about
can have
it.
this
Very
conversation.
simple. Two premises, conclusion. Your argument to those premises of one, we should do everything we can, or it is a noble goal to try to end court picking. Why? Give me your reasons. Let's go through them one by one. Go ahead. Argument one. Go ahead.
Avi just told you the form of the argument is
it doesn't
invalid.
matter. Tell me why this is incorrect.
It matters, so I don't have to.
Without Avi, you tell me why it's invalid.
Because the conclusion doesn't necessarily follow from the.
Why
premises.
doesn't it?
By definition.
Okay, you're acknowledging that we should try to
The truth table. There's at least one case where you could come up with a hypothetical case where all the premises are true and the conclusion doesn't follow.
Give me an example if you can come up with one.
It just does. It's invalid, Rob. I don't know what to tell you.
Wait. You just said you could come up with one example. Give it.
No. If you were to construct a truth table, you could do so.
Okay,
so,
give it to me.
So for example, the conclusion is something about they should do it, right? That's nowhere in one of the premises. That
sure,
term,
we
that they
should try to deter and end court packing. Yes, that's one of the premises.
I thought that was the conclusion.
Premise one.
Wait, no, we should deter, but it doesn't mean that Republicans should court pack. Do you understand that?
We should deter.
Different.
Do you accept the premise we should deter court packing?
In general, yes.
Do you accept the premise if Republicans pack the court, it will deter future court packing?
Yeah, all I'll see again. That is going to be context dependent. I mean,
therefore, conclusion: Republicans should pack the court to deter court packing.
I mean that. I think that clearly doesn't follow. I don't know why he's laughing.
And it goes on. Then I take his syllogism word for word, and instead of court packing, I put FISA abuse.
I would need to see that written out because that does not sound valid. I mean, I think that's a fair critique. You don't need to go any further, right? Once you point out the argument is invalid, there's no reason to accept the conclusion.
His rationale to that is, well, technically it's valid, but I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, on its face, the fact that he had to agree that the Republicans' court packing would deter court packing because he's defined deterrence in the most counterintuitive, nonsensical way possible, that actively engaging in the thing you are trying to deter as a matter of policy counts as deterrence. So, like, it's unbelievable that he's stuck in this corner
I agree totally.
His definitions are that crazy. Like, I mean, Rob, I'm really worried. We got to deter jaywalking in my town.
It's still bothering me because he's saying something like, because Pisco doesn't want to universalize it. It's bothering me because he's saying something like, in some cases, we should deter court packing. I forget the second premise. Therefore, we should get rid of court packing. I mean, like I said, it just doesn't. I would need to see it written out because it just does not. It doesn't sound valid. Nowhere in the premises do you see the conclusion.
And that's why I'm saying jaywalking is perfectly legal. And in fact, we'll give you $10 if you do it. What you might say, hell, that doesn't seem like it's going to deter jaywalking, Ryan. If you give them $10 for jaywalking, it's like, yeah, I'm hoping that in the long term, it has a counterintuitive effect.
That's so many people will jaywalk that it'll become clustered, so less people will
running out of
jaywalk
steam on
because
this.
it's inconvenient to jaywalk. See, deterrence. You can justify any, but the real point there, you can see, it illustrates many points. You make the most salient point. The truth is, when me and you were debating, we'll just say what we honestly believe, right? And then it's like, oh, if someone makes a point, it's like, aha, you didn't think that. You're like, well, shit. What Pisco's doing is always trying to win the meta argument in the moment, always. And he's not thinking, well, how does this apply to the grander scheme? But he has a clever trick to get out of it. Well, because I can subjectively define terms in any way I want. So even if the meta argument right now and what I'm arguing ends up biting me in the ass and somewhere else, I'll just say, now let me redefine then. I'll just redefine now and say, well, that redefinition exactly tailors in to when I think that it proves something I want, it's good, but when you think something, it's bad. Literally, that's what he could do every single time. But even
But then he is changing the argument.
So
If he is doing
making-
that, if he is changing what the premises mean, he is changing the argument. And I think that's fair to point that out, if he is doing that.
An argument that's on its face ridiculous, that court packing will deter court packing, he's then forced to, because he's like, of course that's the case, he's then forced to accept that would be the case no matter who does it. And then once he acknowledges it's a noble goal that we ought do, he's just like, well, Avi, there's exceptions why this would apply. Give me one. Wow, I know there are. What, you should go study more and come back with this. No, I'm fine to have the conversation now.
The point is, he doesn't have to give an example. All he has to show is that it's invalid. I mean, if he wanted to, he could pull up a proof generator, symbolize the propositions in the argument that Rob gave, and show that it's not valid, right? That the conclusion doesn't follow. I mean, he could do that.
It's pretty simple syllogism, right? And you can see just how flustered he was. And the best is when he's just like, it's invalid. Like, it's just, as you said, he's just repeating terms and shit. He has no fucking clue what he's talking about. Like,
I think he knows what validity is. I think he has a clear understanding that validity is just to say that if the premises are true, that the conclusion necessarily follows. I think he knows what that means.
First-year lawyer, he took Phil Bro 101, and he's throwing around these terms, and he's asking his Phil Bro coach to bail him out, when in reality, I don't even give a fuck.
And
about
it sounds like when he appealed to the moderator agreed that the argument was invalid. It's not their fault.
Bro shit. I'm making
Rob, look at my truth table. Yes. And then you said, show me the truth table. He's like, I don't know how to make a truth table, Rob. I know that it could be made.
It's like, when I'm like, okay, here's my FISA silver. I don't want to talk about it. I refuse. You see how it is? He has to control, right? You have to go, everything's proprietary, all of this shit. It is unbelievable just how, and for most people, I think what we're doing is we're debating like in a normative sense. So you're like, well, what really is injurious court packing? There's some sort of mutual goal we have of like a goal of fairness or just, not Pisco. All of it's arbitrary. And I'm not saying that I'm avoiding debates with Pisco in the future. I'm not. But I don't know what the utility is. Why doesn't everything like go ahead, Ryan, I'll pretend you're
I don't know how to deal with formal arguments, so what's the utility?
Pisco, and you're like, all right, Rob, let's debate whether or not there's injurious partisan court packing. And I'm like, cheeseburger, telephone, computer.
Yeah, I mean, Rob, that's a brilliant argument. The way you've defined those terms.
Beard, shirt, t-shirt, your beard, t-shirt.
Based on the way Rob uses those words, that's a brilliant court packing argument. Now, you guys might not understand beard, neck, t-shirt, and to mean those things, but that's Rob just defines those utterances in a way that makes it brilliant.
What's the issue, right? If you clarify what he means by that and you write it down, what's the issue? You're just saying you're using words in a way that I don't like. That's what it sounds like.
You might just not chat. You might not be following Rob's brilliance.
If each word is just an utterance that requires your proprietary definition, what is the explanation of the utterance composed of?
Yeah. Well,
It's
What
composed
does
of
that
words,
mean?
right? Which are just utterances that need explanations of what they are. And those explanations will be comprised of words, which are just utterances that you'll need an explanation of what is. And you know what those explanations will be made of? Words, which are just utterances that you need. And so it's ad reductum, right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of
Yes, I mean that is true. You can have a word and give a definition or explain the meaning of that word. And then if you don't know what a word means in that definition, you can use more words to explain the meaning of that word. That's true. That's true. What's the issue? What the fuck is the issue here? I don't.
like to put it in a practical sense, it's like this: like define cat. It's really hard. We could spend 5 days trying to nail down the exact, and we'll never get there, right? And it's like at some point you have to be like, what is the practical application of this in real life, right? And if the reason I'm doing it is, all right, here's what I'm doing: I'm gonna keep Ryan busy for 8 hours defining cat, while my buddy Black Elk goes and robs his house. You might say that's pretty shitty, Rob. That's what's in effect happening.
Yeah, this is
We're doing all
psychoanalyzing
this
again.
fuck around. We're just
Which they may be correct, right? But it is just psychoanalyzing.
defining words, we're obfuscating, it seems reasonable, blah, blah, blah. By the way, we want complete tyranny and control over your life and complete remake of all of the institutions of this country, separation of church and powers, perpetual power for Democrats. But don't worry about that because we're busy spending 8 hours giving you my proprietary definition of the word deterrence.
Well, I mean, A, there's that. B, the whole meta of this situation is now, I think, fully exposed, right? Like, I think everyone here has seen Pisco be hyper aggressive and shitty to people in debates, right? Like, I mean, can we be honest? That's basically his trademark. So I use his preferred tactic, turnabout's fair play, expose his tyranny, and I'm hyper aggressive to him. And
Is his tactics to disregard his opponent's argument for the proposition that they agreed upon and try to derail the conversation into irrelevant propositions that you guys didn't agree to debate on? Is that a Pisco tactic? Is that why Ryan did that, or
debate? They spend all fucking weekend crying about it. People with, Josiah's got 100 times my subs. He's got 800,000 subs on YouTube. Spends all weekend crying about what I did, right? Then they go on Wick with Gen Z and Desert Druid, and they're just outrageously shitty. Way shittier than I was, even, because they don't really care about being shitty people. What they care about is that I did it to Pisco and he looked like a deer in the fucking headlights, and they didn't like the optics of it, right? Now Pisco goes on with you
because
you
that's
spend
at least when I watched it, that's what it seemed like. It just seemed like a bunch of rhetoric.
11 hours of your time debunking his syllogism, which is, by the way, an absurd feat of endurance and generosity, right? Like,
I am weird.
I agree with that.
Like, I mean, who the fuck would even think that any human would do that? And what I'm warming up to is that Andrew Wilson's right. Andrew Wilson's right. Like, if you're talking to somebody who's going to make a moral argument and you detect that they're doing this sort of like subjective thing, then just skip ahead. Skip to the punchline and be like, define your terms. Is it preferences? Define your terms. Is it preference? Because it's always going to go there eventually.
But what's the critique of that, dude? What the fuck is the critique? Yeah, people do, like Andrew, like Jay Dyer, they'll point out like, hey, you have a subjectivist or anti-realist meta ethic? And that's the extent of the critique. That like that's literally it. It's just to say, well, my preferences, like that's supposed to be an argument or something.
Will save you 11 hours.
Yeah, that's
like,
exactly.
It took 11 hours to get there, and unfortunately, it didn't get any further than that. It's just, okay, these are bullshit proprietary definitions. And the last thing I'll say on this, I know I'm ranting. There's a philosopher named Stephen Hicks who hates postmodernism.
Because, like, imagine if, I think they both believe in God. Andrew believes in God. Imagine if somebody else did that. Oh, you get your ethics from God, from Magod. Your morality comes from Magod's preferences. And that was it, right? They'd be like, yeah, what's the issue, right? That's exactly what they would do if you just scoffed at their view, because that's what's happening with a lot of these spaces. They just kind of scoff at anti-realist meta ethics, but they don't ever give like a critique, and if they do, it's usually some shitty critique that's been addressed a million times.
He has a lecture series about how to debate postmodernists, and this is his point ultimately.
Is Pisco a postmodernist?
If they're talking about philosophy, they're talking about science, they're talking about art, they're talking about music, they don't care because they don't believe in truth.
Does he think that what the fuck? Does he think that Pisco's like a relativist about truth or something? I don't know.
What they're really talking about is politics. They're always talking about politics. They're just talking about how to get what they want because they don't believe in truth. So what are we talking about? What are we moving towards in a dialectic if you don't believe that there's truth to find? Just getting to your preferences? That's the point of this exercise? Okay, well, if that's what we're talking about, I'll treat it accordingly. And I think, you did a brilliant job, Rob, but holy shit, I would
just because it sounds like we're confusing like theories of truth and meta ethics. Just because somebody is a anti-realist in the ethics domain, that doesn't mean that they're a relativist about truth, or they're like an alethic nihilist where they think like truth doesn't exist. Like none of that is entailed from an anti-realist meta ethic. That's just confused if that's what's being said, because people do make that connection quite a bit. They think, oh, you think morality is subjective? Well, do you also think that the moon is made of cheese? Do you think that's subjective? They're just not necessarily connected. Somebody can be a correspondence theory about truth and be an anti-realist meta-ethically. As far as I can tell, there's no tension there.
not have had 11 hours of patience in my heart for that conversation.
Well, I really wanted to, I love picking through that bullshit. And I've done this with Pisco before where I've debated him like 8-9 hours because it's this sort of thing. Because what he's used to is people just getting exacerbated or the clock running out. And so I'm like, I'll stay here all night, motherfucker. You'll rage quit before I do. So let's go through it. But it really did illustrate the point that you were trying to make, right? That in an hour, all it's going to do is run down these rabbit holes, He gives a syllogism and then says, I demand that you attack one of these. And he can't just say, yep, here's a clear.
That's his argument. Of course he wants you to attack his argument. What the fuck? Like, imagine somebody gives an argument in natural language and the other person just starts talking about other things. And then the other person's like, yeah, but will you actually attack my argument? Right? You would think, oh, yeah, that's fucking reasonable, right? There's a proposition on the table. The person's trying to justify that proposition. And then the other person is just talking about something completely different.
Definition. Notice how when he was interrogating my syllogism, I'd have like one or two words. Yep. Right? Things like that. Oh, no, it says that. Like that, not him. Well, it depends. We'd have to look if other things were equal. And so he makes it, like you said, impossible to have the...
Please, God, just do a little bit of reading. Or just like watch some Kane B videos on logic or something. Like, you don't need to know a whole lot to deal with this stuff like this. You don't need a whole lot to... You don't need a lot... You don't need to understand everything there is to know about logic. You just need the basics to be able to deal with formal arguments like what Pisco gave. You don't need a lot.
Conversation. He needs to do it, though, because you can see when it was more normative, he's getting blown the fuck out. Like, if you just go through it, premise one, which is basically all the other premises, which implies a should, you reject it because you're like, no, I don't think there's a universal truth that we could accept that thinks you should be allowed to go beyond reciprocity. Yeah. Well, we reject that. Give me the reason why that ought be the case.
There you go. Right there. You're essentially asking for a supporting argument for premise one. And then you should stay there, right, until he gives that supporting argument. And then if he gives another supporting argument, right, and you disagree with one of those premises, you ask for a supporting argument for that premise. I mean, it's very easy. Very easy.
I don't think so. If I asked you all, right, if Democrats if Republicans gerrymander 5 seats, Democrats are justified in gerrymandering 200, you'd be like, probably not. Fairness would be they get a similar amount. So why can we go beyond that? Premise 2, there was injurious partisan Supreme Court packing. No, there wasn't, right? And if you do define Supreme Court packing in the way you are so loose, then it happened to Bork, it happened to Clarence Thomas, it happened to Kavanaugh. All of it would fit.
Oh, no. That's not my proprietary definition,
correct.
Bob.
My exact definition of it is Bork doesn't
count.
count.
See, now they're actually now it seems like they're not using the language I would typically use, but it seems like they are following the sort of debate norms that I would like now, right? Because now they're going premise by premise. They're asking for supporting arguments, or they're taking what that premise that Pisco accepts as true. They're taking that sort of criteria and applying it to other cases to see if he's consistent. That is what a competent person does, right?
Right? Okay, number 3, there's no effective reverse without court packing. I got him to admit that. I literally got him to, like, shamed him on every premise. No effective way to reverse it without court packing. I said, let me ask you this, Pisco. When the court packing happened, let's assume you had this syllogism, and then Democrats won. Not Trump, but Democrats win. Hillary wins, right? And which, by the way, Democrats assumed was going to occur.
They thought they were going to win.
Right.
Yeah.
What would that have solved the injury? Because now they wouldn't have even had to appoint someone who's more mediocre like Garland. They could have went with a Ketanji Brad Jackson, right?
Yeah, which is why Obama didn't withdraw the nomination. He was making a gamble.
He says, Pisco's like, let me think about it. Yeah, I guess that would have solved the injury. I'm like, okay, then the claim that there's no way to reverse it is bullshit. There was an immediate way to reverse it. There's literally thousands of things you could do. You could win this next election in 2026. And then if there's
Here we go. Okay, I'm liking this part of it. Because he's actually using Pisco's criteria to falsify that premise, right? To show that premise is obviously false. That's good. I like this. This is good. Finally.
a vacancy that comes up, you could reject Trump's. You could win in 2028 and all the vacancies that
And the thing is, that's not even necessarily his burden to do that. It definitely moves the debate forward maybe quicker because you're able to falsify it in real time and not wait for him to give a supporting argument for it. You are taking on that burden to falsify the premise. That's not even necessarily your burden to falsify the premise. But I mean, this is much better than what I've been hearing so far.
come up, you could appoint yourself, right? There's tons of things you could do. He needs to win that there is no other effective way. And what he says, even when I got to the point where it was like, there's a plane wreck, now liberals have all 9 justices. Is that, would that effectively reverse the injury? He says no. They need more than all 9 justices. And I was like, but Pisco, if that's your definition, then there literally is no chance to ever reverse the injury. If even that won't, then what's the point? And I was like, if we go down that rabbit hole, then I could say it is impossible to reverse the injury of Bork. No matter what we ever do, even if you give us 9 justices on the Supreme Court, it still won't reverse the injury to Bork.
I gotta piss. Sorry. Felt great.
Bork to the time frame of all the decisions between when Bork was injured and now. Therefore, there will never be enough. So he loses that premise. The proposed reciprocal.
And Rob, okay. can I just interject and make one point that I think is really important here? Because I know that like Pisco wants, I guess he told you in the first part, he wants to do this technical premise, syllogism, debate style. This is far from my key point about him, but let's take that for granted. He has the affirmative position. That means he bears the burden of proof on every single premise. It's
Why are they spitting now, dude? Now they're fucking spitting. Let's go. It's true. How far? It took an hour. It took an hour for them to start spitting fire, you know?
he has to prove every premise is true, not you. You
That's
don't have
true,
to prove
yeah.
it's false. He has to prove it's true. But the way he actually wants to debate is not in the technical style.
Then fucking point that out. Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do that? Huh? No.
Up and says, I have a valid syllogism. Which premise do you think is false? Right? They're all assumed to be true. It's up to you to disprove them. So,
well, is that what he said, or did he say, which premise do you contest? Right. That is different, because somebody could just like think every premise except for the last premise right before the conclusion is true. So there's no point in him providing arguments, supporting arguments for any of the other premises, right? He would just need to give a supporting argument for the premise that his interlocutor doesn't accept.
but wait a minute. Are we doing technical debate?
Now, if he did ask, like, that is a rhetorical move if he did do that. Like, well, which premise do you think is false? And then try to burden shift. But once again, you could easily point out that that's not your burden and to put the burden right back on him where it should be.
On technical debate, if you advance a syllogism, you have the burden of proof on every single one of them. If you fight him to a draw, you win the tie. Now, you didn't fight him to a draw. You actually won on every point. But even his protestation that he wants to do technical debate is bullshit. He's lying. He doesn't want to do technical debate. He wants to use the aesthetic of technical debate.
How did that? Maybe they know more Pisco more than I do, because I don't get that vibe that he's like doing this for the, like, using a formal argument for the aesthetic of using a formal argument. I don't get that vibe, but maybe they know him better than I do.
To advance a political agenda. So fuck him.
Even like I didn't get to make this point at the end, but premise 5 I think is maybe the most laughable, which is there's no reason to expect a severe consequence cascade. I get him to admit, because at the end I'm like, okay, if the audience, because at the end of the day, once you get this reductive, how do we prove whether the syllogism is something that we ought to do the conclusion? And you want to know what the answer is going to be? We each make up our mind for ourselves, right? Right? So what we're appealing to is an audience.
I don't know what he means by that.
Something that we ought to do the conclusion. And you want to know
Well, it depends what you mean by ought there. What sort of meta ethics are you baking into that? Oh, hold on. I got to let my cat out.
answer is going to be? We each make up our mind for ourselves, right?
We each make up our mind for ourselves. I don't know. I mean, you are the one deciding whether or not you accept a premise or not. I don't understand what he's getting at, and you could be wrong about that, right? You could say that premise seems false, right? That premise is false, and then you could just be wrong about it, and actually the argument does go through, right? Because the premises are true, so the conclusion necessarily follows if it's a valid argument. I feel like I'm misinterpreting what Rob's saying there. I don't know.
Right? So what we're appealing to is an audience. Pisco is trying to appeal to an audience. So I'm trying to set the stage. Okay, you're watching this. If you think premise 2 is false.
I just noticed the meta here. I'm reviewing their review. Now, if one of them responds and reviews my review, it's like an inception of debate reviews, right? I wonder how deep we can really go. Might need a totem. I'll use my Lucy Breakers as my totem here. Oh fuck. All right. We're deep already. Totem fell.
You reject the conclusion.
Oh wait, no. That means I'm in the real world, right? If it kept spinning, that means I'm not in the real world. Okay, yeah. So we're good. We're grounded. We're grounded in reality.
If you think premise 3 is false, you reject the conclusion. So I'm getting very literal. I say, if people think that it does overshoot beyond mild deterrence, they should reject this, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess. I say premise 5. There's no reason to suspect severe consequence. If they think there will be severe consequences, they reject. And he's hemming it on. I said, if Avi thinks that Republicans will pack the court, would he reject this? Pisco says yes. I said, if you think Republicans will pack the court, should you reject this? He says no. I say, what's the difference? Why is it if Avi thinks it versus if you do, one rejects and one doesn't? And then he says, well, because Avi's preferences would think court cause. I'm like, how do you know his preferences? You haven't asked him. He's like, okay. Because he doesn't believe, Pisco doesn't believe that Republicans packing the court are a severe consequence. Do you see the problem with that statement?
It's his argument, though. So it just depends on what he means by a severe legal consequence, right? So it would be dependent on him. It's his argument and what he means when he's delivering the argument. What's the problem?
The entire argument was they packed the court with Merrick Garland, which is a severe consequence.
Well, Merrick Garland doesn't end up in the premises anywhere. So now we're talking about something else and not the argument.
That's his entire argument. The entire reason.
No, it's not his argument. Nowhere in the premises does he mention Merrick Garland. I don't even think he uses Merrick Garland in any of the premises for the supporting arguments for his premises. I don't fucking know, dude. And I'm definitely not going back to watch a 10-hour debate or to watch his debate with Ryan again. That was hell.
For the fucking plan and the syllogism is because he says Republican court packing is a severe consequence. Then when I say your plan will lead to Republican court packing, he says, I don't think that would be a severe consequence.
Oh,
I mean, I don't know what to say other than, and it's. Impossible. That's a clear, easy point to make, except when every 3 words out of my mouth, he's going, no, that's equivocation, blah, blah, blah. And it takes 11 hours to get to places. You can see on every one of these premises, it's like, it's such a joke.
He admitted this in my debate with him. He admitted it on Wick's panel. He's admitted it multiple times. In a world where the Supreme, in fact, I gave him the quote from Brad Palumbo, which he said I misrepresented, and then he admitted it was true in your conversation and my debate and on Wick's panel. In a world where the parties take turns packing the court, and the court keeps growing larger and larger and larger, and the rule of law is impacted, however that is impacted by the growth of the court, which I think would be pretty negative, but we can set that aside for now. He thinks that is preferable to the status quo. Therefore, it's not a severe consequence cascade based on his preferences. But then he's making an ontological argument. His premise 5 is there won't be a serious consequence cascade, and he's defining serious consequence cascade in such a way that it can never happen. Because he said, well, I don't believe that's a serious consequence cascade, even though it is the thing that everyone worries about in terms of court packing. It's just a proprietary definition customized to his preferences that he admits even like Avi, his friend, wouldn't agree with. So like at the end of the day.
Okay. Yeah. He means a specific thing by that premise, and he's meta-ethically an anti-realist. Yeah. It's his argument. I feel like we're like looping. What's the issue? You're just saying I have a different notion of severe legal consequences. Okay, but now you're talking about something else and not his argument. That should be very clear. Now, once again, a competent person, they would just take what he means and try to run counterintuitive reductios, right? They would try to run reductios on whatever he means by severe legal consequence. right? And maybe they think that is a reductio, that him saying that is not a severe legal consequence. Maybe they think that is a reductio, but it doesn't show that the premise is false. Sorry, I'm just thinking about that. Because you could say that, once again, I'm trying not to talk about the substance or the content because this is out of my wheelhouse, right? I was trying to focus on like the structure, debate norms, things like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't have that intuition that that's necessarily a severe legal consequence, but I'm probably just ignorant, right? So I feel like I have no place to give my view on that.
Just say my preference is the Democrats pack the court, because that's all you're saying. You're saying it's my preference, and you're using.
But if he says it's my preference, you should attack the reasons why he has that preference. If he's giving, like, once again, some sort of criteria for why this is preferable, then you attack the criteria. I don't think he's saying there's like, it's just my preference, right? And there's no like, like considerations for why he has that preference or something.
A lot of fancy words around it.
That's like, and like, it's bad enough to take like a noun or a verb and have a proprietary definition. But like an adjective or an adverb, it's even worse, right? So like, what is court packing? And to have a proprietary definition, that's bad. Now, what if I said, what is mild court packing? Holy fuck, the gate's open. That could be anything. I could define court packing how I want, and I could define mild how I want. So I could say, what is a calm man?
Yep, you can. That is true. You can define words how you'd like. That is true.
They even said this, by the way, at one point. It's on. Let me see. This actually one of the
It seems like a lot of their critique is just about language use. Like he's using a term that is he's using the term in a non-standard way. But where do we go from there, right? What is supposed to be the issue with him doing that? Is the issue itself, when you say it's an issue, when you say you're using the terms the way you are is an issue, and all you mean by issue is it's non-standard, he would probably just grant that. That's like trivially true, if that's what he's doing. But is there anything further? Like,
commentators on my video said this. It's absolutely hilarious. Let's see. Thank you to Dat Snipper, who says this. There's so many clips I couldn't even count. Someone needs to count the number of times Pisco accidentally concedes the debate before redefining terms or contradicting himself. My personal favorite, Pisco, and this is not a verbatim quote, but close enough. Quote, the prompt is just utterances that convey an idea. So the words are meaningless until I define them in this debate. Therefore, premise 1, all dogs are mortal. Premise 2, Socrates is a dog. Conclusion, Socrates is mortal, is a valid syllogism, even if Socrates is not a dog, because a dog could just be defined to mean a man. He literally said that, right?
Even if he wasn't defining dog as a man, it would still be valid. But now it just makes it a sound argument, because Socrates is a man, right?
Hours later, Pisco, the meanings of terms subjective? Nope. There are standard usages for terms, obviously. So he's literally...
Did he deny that the usage of language is mind dependent? I highly doubt he would reject that.
There are standard usages for terms, obviously. So he's literally telling me, I'm just arguing, is this a valid syllogism? I literally could define man means dog. But then later when I'm like, this is really bad, these are just total subjective terms. Clearly not. Clearly we have to have a universal understanding of what the terms are.
He
a universal... Did he say we need a universal understanding of what the words are? I think he would agree that there is utility in shared meaning of terms, right? But if he's giving an argument and he wants to convey something very specific, maybe he wants to give definitions that are similar to the standard definition, right? But may not capture everything that he's trying to convey. So he tweaks it a little bit. So it is accurate to what he's trying to convey. I don't see what the fucking issue is. It's like the same thing over and over again. It's just, I don't like how you're using words. That's what it sounds like.
He appeals to objectivity when it suits him and not when it doesn't, right? Of course. And by the way, as a kind of meta
Example?
critique, what the fuck is law if you don't believe that there's an objective meaning to reach towards? Like,
what the fuck is objective meaning? Think about what he's saying. Objective typically means mind independent, right? And meaning is like one of those words. I'm not sure if you can break it down any further. That might be some sort of semantic primitive for me. I don't know if I can tell you what I mean by meaning. That, like, if you don't know, when I tell you this is what that word means, and you ask me, well, what does mean? I would probably say, well, probably the same notion that you just used when you asked me what does mean, right? I would probably say something like that, or I would give ostensive definitions and try to give examples. I don't think I could break down meaning further, though. So when he says mind independent meaning, I don't even know what the fuck he's talking about. Where do we find this? I want to say, where do we find this? But I don't even know what this is, right?
like, you know, I mean, if like when I say like if you say it's unconstitutional to do something, isn't there some like enduring set objective meaning of the Constitution that we're
Objective meaning again. There's a similar notion that we share about what that word means, right? But that's consistent with meaning being mind dependent. That doesn't make it objective. That might make it like intersubjective.
appealing to? Because if all you're saying is I interpret the Constitution based on my preferences such that what you're doing is unconstitutional, I might ask, well, why do I care about that?
Well, I think
Somebody could say the same thing if whatever the gibberish objective meaning means. Somebody can say, well, why the fuck should I care about the objective meaning, right? It's kind of like the objective moral facts thing. Why should anybody give a fuck about the objective moral facts, if there are any? If there's an objective moral fact that I should walk my dog every Tuesday at 5 p.m., why the fuck should I care about that? No, I'm going to walk my dog when I want, right? I care about what I care about. Why the fuck would I give a... Why the fuck should I care about the objective moral facts, right? Give me something to motivate me to care. It seems like we run into the same issue that he's trying... I don't even see it as an issue, but he sees it as an issue. But it seems like we run into the same issue with his view of objective meaning and objective morality. Why the fuck should anybody care about the objective meaning?
Hey, why do I
I
care?
didn't make a lot of hay with this, but one of the arguments I said is like, look,
And why do I care? He's appealing to his values and preferences when he does that too. Why should I care? Care, right? So do you think that there isn't an objective meaning? You want your subjective psychology to be satisfied? That's what you care about, right? You could run the rhetoric with that too.
when the courts are deciding whether or not someone's guilty of a crime, they have a statute, right, that they're looking at, and it's defining terms. So did you commit insurrection? Pisco knows. He says, here is the standard legal definition. So you appeal to sort of an attempt at an objective definition when it comes to...
It's not objective. Why would that make it objective? Appealing to like statutes or how it's been used legally in the past, why the fuck would that entail that it's an objective definition? I don't even know. Do they what are they trying to say? Do they understand what they're trying to say?
the concept of the law. Why should it be different when we're talking about the discussion we're having here? Now, look, it's it's again like back to the example of the cat. Or like there's all these things. You can constantly go one step further. Well, what's a cat? Well, a cat's an animal with 4 legs. I had a cat with 3 legs. Okay, a cat's an animal usually with 4 legs. It can have 3 legs at time to time. Okay, but I had one with 2. Okay, a cat's an animal, right? And you can just keep going. The genetic makeup of a cat is this, blah, blah, blah. You can keep going over and over and over. What is a chair? You can define it reductum, right? Millions upon millions of ways. The problem is, right, we understand that there's a collective meaning that makes like sort of communication in the first place.
Collective meaning?
Intuitive. And without it,
is that what they mean by objective? That's intersubjective. That everybody shares a similar notion of what this sound or utterance means. That's just intersubjective. That's not objective. That's not independent of people's minds.
Constantly define terms reductively like that, there is no possibility for communication. So when I see you and I say, hey,
that doesn't
how was
follow.
your night last night, Ryan? We have a 95% agreement implicitly with what those terms mean. However, it is technically true that those are social construct, those words, and that it's not an objective meaning because the meaning can be fluid from time to
What the fuck is happening? So he's agreeing that meaning is mind dependent? Is he agreeing with that now?
time, right? Because sometimes as society moves, linguistics tell you about this, as society is
It sounds like they're confusing objective and intersubjective.
slightly changes the definition in small ways over hundreds of years.
Sure.
It can match. The problem is what they do is they take the fact that it's subjective and say, therefore, there's no different than me and you arguing like, is that a chair or not? You know, to I think that man means dog. It's the exact same thing. So I could say deterrence could mean the opposite of deterrence. Perfectly fine, because after all, it's all subjective.
You can do that, right? Okay. And if the objective meaning of dog was man, would you give a shit, or would you still use dog to refer to canines, right? Or would you be like, no, I care about the objective definition. So when I say dog, I'm really referring to men. No, you would probably be like, I don't really give a shit about the objective meaning of the word dog. Everybody around me, when they say the word dog, they're referring to like this little creature with fur and 4 legs and barks, and like that's what they're referring to. Why the fuck should I give a fuck about the objective meaning?
Yeah,
That's
well,
the absurdity.
There's the difference between saying
Why is that an absurdity? It seems like it applies to your view.
there's a real world out there, and what we're trying to do is come up with definitions that match.
You know that neurobiology supports trans rights of trans folks, right? Well, neurobiology, it's purely descriptive. And trans rights is normative or legal. To be fair, I support trans people, okay? I don't know what that has to do with this, but and I don't know about the empirics on the neurobiology. I have heard that before, that like, for example, like a trans man psychology is more closely related to the neurobiology of a cis man. I have heard that. I haven't looked into it because to me, I don't know if the empirics matter much. A lot of that debate just seems like a semantic dispute rather than like an empirical question.
The real world to the best extent we can. We understand it's never going to be perfect, but what we're trying to do with language is match it onto reality, versus saying, well, it's all subjective, so the words can be whatever we want, right? Like if you're not,
but that's what, even if, but that's, I'm assuming that's still the goal of the person who thinks that meaning is subjective. They're still trying to, quote unquote, match it to reality, right?
Favorite phrase, because he's now a 101 philosophy bro. If you're not indexing it to reality, then you're lost in private languages now. That's where you've ended up. And ultimately, he's doing all of this in service of just pure partisan politics, right? Like the most purely partisan, fuck the Republicans, I just want to punish them. That's his point. His point is, I just want to punish the Republicans.
Yeah.
Right. But it's ironic because like him and Destiny with the Colorado Trump thing, where they tried to take Colorado tried to take Trump off the ballot. 9-0 Supreme Court, as I'm fond of reminding Destiny. They think the court was wrong. Well, how could the Supreme Court be wrong if it's a social construct? In our social construct, the Supreme Court are.
What do you think he means by wrong? He's taking Babelsmith literally. Who is? Ryan or Rob? Hold on, I missed.
As I'm fond of reminding Destiny. They think the court was wrong. Well, how could the Supreme Court be wrong if it's a social construct? In our social.
Well, it depends. It depends what you mean by wrong, because I'm assuming you're equivocating on wrong there, right? When they say wrong, if they're a subjectivist, they're referring to certain values that maybe themselves or that most people in society have that were violated, right? That's what it sounds like Destiny would be talking about. He's talking about certain principles, values, preferences that were violated, right? Now, the sense that you're talking about when you say, well, it's not wrong, it's a social construct. What are you talking about when you say wrong? If you're not referring to people's values, stances, preferences, desires, whatever the fuck you want to say. What are you saying, right? Because it sounds like you're just equivocating on wrong. What do you mean by wrong?
Construct, the Supreme Court are the people who get to decide what's constitutional. So if they all agree this is what it means, on a social basis, there's no basis for you to disagree.
There's no basis for you to disagree. What do you mean by no basis, right? And what does it mean to disagree with? Is he talking about the decision? Because it still wouldn't necessarily be a disagreement if they're subjectivist, right? They would just have different stances, right? There wouldn't be a disagreement about a given proposition. They would just have different values. And if he's talking about a definition, well, definitions, they can't be true or false, right? Definitions, they're not propositional. It's like if I define a laptop and I say, okay, define laptop. A computer, handheld, mobile with a keyboard and a screen. That's not a proposition. That can't be true or false, right? Now you can say a laptop is X, Y, and Z. That becomes a proposition, but the X, Y, and Z part, that is not a proposition. What does it mean to say something like a foldable mobile computer? What does it mean to say that's true, right?
To disagree, you would have to disagree on a purely individual preference basis or by appealing to an objective standard, right? So it's objective when they feel like it.
I don't think that's a true dichotomy. It's either objective or individually relativized. You could be a cultural relativist. That's a clear counterexample. You could be a relativist. You could be a realist and a relativist. So I guess in that case, you would be appealing to something objective. But in the former case with the cultural relativism, you're not appealing to an individual. You're appealing to a collection of individuals and the sort of aggregate of their values. And there's probably other examples, right? I mean, you could be like an ear theorist and think all moral propositions are just false.
They're certainly not going to say, I think the Supreme Court's wrong because my preferences. They're going to appeal to an objective standard when they want to make a point about the Supreme Court being wrong. But when you try to
I'm just going to let him keep talking.
pin them down on the definition of court packing, suddenly there's no actual meaning. Suddenly,
Correct.
you know, it's objective when it suits them. It's subjective when it's not, which is a joke.
And I know enough about postmodernism. I remember learning about this a little in debate. I like a 3 out of 10 in understanding it. But the idea is if there's no truth, then all conversations are just power dynamic.
Why do we keep bringing up postmodernism and that there's no truth? I don't think that's like Destiny or Pisco's view that there is no truth. I think we're just confusing, once again, like them thinking morality is subjective, or meaning is subjective with sounds like relativism about truth or nihilism about truth. That's not entailed by either of those views.
Yep.
Even this conversation I'm having right now with you, there's no truth here. There's no like actual attempt at mutual understanding. It's just me trying to get a leg up over you and you trying to get a leg up over me. That's it. And that's what all human interaction and communication is. If there's no truth,
I highly doubt that's what that's what they think. They think it's all just power dynamics. There is no there is no mind independent truths. I'm assuming that like Pisco and Destiny think that it is objectively true that it takes 8 minutes for light from the sun to reach Earth. I'm assuming they think that's an objective fact. That's something that's true independent of anybody's stances.
then there's no lie, there's no mistruth, right? There's no value to attempting to be something that doesn't exist, which
Now, the funny thing is, somebody could say, it depends on their view of God, but somebody could say that, no, actually, you guys think everything is subjective. Like, the fact that it takes 8 minutes for light to go from the sun or from the sun to Earth, that was dependent on God's mind, right? So that's subjective on your view, right? All of those truths are actually subjective. None of those are objective because they're all of those truths are dependent on God's stances.
is true.
Once again, that depends on their view of God, though, to be fair.
Everything's subjective. All moralities are subjective. So what are we left with? I could easily say, Ryan, let me borrow your car because I need to go get milk for my baby. And my intent could be to steal your car. And there's nothing wrong with that because all
That doesn't follow. Jesus Christ. That could be true on moral realism too. It could be an objective moral fact that you should lie to somebody to steal their car, right? But what would you say to that? You'd probably be like, I don't give a fuck about the objective moral facts then, right? That seems consistent with realism. These sort of pot shots at anti-realism and subjectivism are garbage. I mean, they're hot trash.
all that matters is a power dynamic, and I got power of getting your car, which is good. That's it. That's all there is. And the person that
And that's all there is on the objective view, right? It is an objective moral fact that I should deceive you to steal your car, right? It's an objective fact. I don't give a fuck about your preferences. I'm going to steal your car. It's objectively good.
stands up and says, but wait a minute, that will harm society. That person doesn't give a shit about society. That person, too, is attempting to have power. Anybody that objects, right? And so what happens is you can blatantly lie and mislead people. In this debate, for example, and I brought this up, Beast goes like, he starts to talk about political targeting, right? Or political investigations, right? Do I think the investigation into Comey's political? Yes. Do I think in the context of what Peace goes